Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday, and thank Cthulhu, it's Sunday. Welcome to another episode of the Owl Light Society in our Camp Owl Light format. We're going to do campfire stories tonight. With us, we have some amazing guests. I'm going to hand this over to my friend Raz right now, a co-host, and we'll move on and you'll get to see everybody who's going to join us. We're going to have James Milton Case. We have Tom Morse Jr., Tom Dog from Brill Pro, as well as Rob Smales. And here's Raz.
Hey guys, so you're gonna notice some big changes tonight. The first and foremost being that we are no longer with the previous network that we were with. We are currently a network unto ourselves now. The Owlite Network has been a lot of effort into that. A lot of on my end, years worth of stuff for Owlite, and close to a year with or actually probably closer to 2 years with Dell in the background helping with a lot of stuff. We didn't really want to have to make any kind of statement at all, and we're only going to make one statement where we just want to be professional about this, guys, because at the end of the day, that's what we should all be worried about. We provide very different content than our prior network does. There is no overlapping anyway. There is no competition. We heavily urge you guys to please continue to support them, continue to, watch their network, watch their programming. The more you watch any small show, no matter what network it is, honestly, the better it is for all podcasters in the entire industry. So keep plugging away, keep listening to every show on any out there. And we wish everyone well, best in their endeavors. And we're excited about what the future holds.
And James.
Hi. Taking the high road, that's an interesting concept. But yeah, I'm a writer, blogger, podcaster, as you can read here. I'm just happy to show up again.
All right, over to Rob.
Rob needs to find the friggin' mute button. Hi, my name is Rob and I write stuff. That's kind of it.
I love it.
All right, and Tom Dog.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Tom Dog here, executive producer at Brill Pro, home of Channel X and Wrestling Prime. And I'm glad to be back on here. It's great. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have everybody together tonight. Sorry, I was a little off at the beginning. We were starting and I'm tonight. So words are fun. we're dealing with a lot of new stuff, playing with some stuff. So hey everybody. And we kind of just threw around to decide who's going to go first. And guess who happens to be going first?
It's gonna be me.
Gonna be Raz.
Before we do that, what's everybody been up to this week? We haven't seen some of you at least a week, so some of you longer. How's everybody doing it? Let's check in real quick.
Yeah.
Well, they've loosened up the ankle on my prosthetic so I can actually have a better roll thing. It lets me walk halfway normal, actually.
That's awesome.
And this afternoon I was watching Fast X finally. And this is a movie, you've got to see this movie because this is a movie that has 3 of the top 5 guys I'd go gay for. Jason Momoa, Jason Statham, and John Cena.
Wait, how can you'd never be able to find him? You can't see John. So, I mean, that seems like a failed experiment.
Other people can see him.
Okay. We'll sonar that shit, okay.
Yeah. So one of these days, now that you're up and about again, we are going to have to go. And James and I used to do pub nights. He would come here to visit me in Lincoln, and we would go visit our favorite bartender, Danielle, down at the.
She probably thinks we're all dead now.
Yeah, we would visit her
accepted,
like twice a month.
She's accepted that we have died in a fiery flash or whatever.
Here's what you do.
Done with her life.
Get a Polaroid camera, right? Take Polaroid pictures of yourself, and then get like a bunch of magazines, cut out letters, and send a ransom note, but addressed to her at the job.
You want a tow? Yeah, I can get you a tow.
Yeah, if you want to see your favorite patrons again, have 2 drinks ready at 9:00 on Friday.
Oh, she does.
Sit down and just
She does.
The second she'd see us like heading for the door, and by the time we'd sit down, there'd be a double Maker's Mark in front of me and a Diet Coke with grenadine in front of James. Like,
one question: everyone in my household loves the Fast movies. I have seen all of them except for this one. They've all watched it. I haven't seen it yet. What I have a hard time getting past is the very first one, and I won't make this like super long. How is it not Point Break? How is the first movie not exactly Point Break with some of the same recycled dialogue, but just sports cars instead of extreme sports?
Well,
I
you
was thinking that
see,
same thing.
they actually remade Point Break into a lame one,
But that was
which actually
after,
does recycle everything.
yeah, but that
No
was well
cars.
after the first Fast and the Furious, because literally the entire Living 1/4 mile at a time, it uses some of the same wording and is the same exact speech as Living Life on the Edge.
I don't know.
It confused me. Like, it's not necessarily bad. It confuses me that I thought I was just watching Point Break with cars.
Well, the thing is, I've never really seen the originals. When I was in rehab, one of the channels was playing that one where they hijack a nuclear sub. I can't remember which one. But also, I've also seen Hobbs and Shaw because, come on,
That was fun. I've seen that one too. Yeah, that's a fun one.
that was great.
I think Tokyo
And
Drift
this
is probably one of my favorites.
and this one,
Hello.
Jason Momoa.
Yeah, that's cool. I dig it, man. All right, cool.
I would eat his asshole.
This would be a good time to say that the Owlite Network is rated R.
Usually, it's Raz that's breaking into the R section.
It's rated R for Raz. If I'm just on the show, you know you're screwed. So buckle in.
Yeah. So,
What about you, Rob? What have you had going on this week?
I'm just working and trying to get ready to go on vacation next week.
I feel
Where are
like
you
it's
going?
been so long since we've seen you.
All this stuff, yeah, it's been a week.
We missed
In
you
less than
so
a week.
much.
But yeah, I'm heading out next Saturday. I'm going to Colorado. I'm in Massachusetts right now. And so I'm trying to get all the stuff done that I'm not going to be able to do next weekend, so that it's not waiting for me when I get back 2 weeks.
If you're going to be driving, you can visit. I'm in Lincoln. You have to go through us to get right past us.
I'm going to be flying.
Oh, you're fancy.
See, I don't
Okay.
like
Sound-
planes
and
'cause I'm
sound
fat
asleep.
on the ground, so I drive.
That's what I do.
Swim drives me.
Uh,
I do love Colorado though. I've taken let's see, 2 or 3 different trips there are just in the last couple of years. I got married there for a 420 festival on the very last leap year, like the last leap day we had. That's where I got married, right in the ruins across from the Stanley. So it's like the Estes Park ruins.
oh,
So we
nice.
got married in the ruins, staring at the Stanley, and all our wedding pictures were at the Stanley. And then we got to go for 420 festival last year, which was an amazing experience. And every time I go down, I stay in a different area. I've stayed like kind of in Estes. I've stayed closer to Denver. And
I
the
like
last
Estes.
time we went down, we stayed near Colorado Springs this last time. And it's like you have a little different experience of what Colorado is just by staying a half an hour at most, like in a different triangle. So like it's really cool that they've got down there, man.
And he visited me last year when he went through for 420, and the three of us along the top row here all went and saw Henry Rollins.
And Henry Rollins, yes.
We
Oh,
bring
nice.
that up a lot. We're like,
We do.
we
That
see
was a
Henry
nice
Rollins. Hey, yeah. Ever see Henry Rollins? We did.
That was a bonding
I've
experience.
seen him twice now.
I was just, I just this morning, I was thinking that man got on stage and went nonstop for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
On full the whole time. Like he
Right.
never turns off.
Didn't actually finish a glass of water.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
All I remember is that I was just transfixed. And sometime near the end, after the 2 hour mark, I was thinking, I really need to use the bathroom, but I don't want to miss any of this.
If this man could go this fast all the time and get all the way through the whole show and tell us everything that he wants to say and make sense the entire time, we are going to sit here and enjoy it. Damn it. Because otherwise he could be off selling Haagen-Dazs.
Haagen-Dazs.
Oh yeah.
Sorry if I broke everybody's eardrums there. I forget.
Nope.
What about you,
Have a
Tom?
great
What have you been up to this last week, man?
Well, this past weekend, last night, I did a very special episode of Wrestling Prime paying tribute to Iron Sheik, and it was a pretty good episode, and it's on my YouTube channel now. You should go check it out. And the week's not over yet because I got a busy week too. This week for Channel X, I'm going to be doing a Gamers Week, which was supposed to be E3 week, but since E3 is not happening, I'm going to be I'm doing my own event. So This is the first time. This is the first time I'm doing something like this, and but I'm still keeping the tribute of my E3 specials alive. So
awesome.
I got a very busy week this week. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to be doing I'm going to be covering everything that went down at the Xbox showcase earlier today.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And you can go ahead. I know you're doing Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, PC, and just a general wrap up, right?
Right. And so it's going to be. So I haven't heard any information on Nintendo, so that's going to be a little bit difficult. I'm just going to have to root around and see what's going to be available for Nintendo and just go on their website. But I haven't heard anything about their Nintendo Direct, but nonetheless, it's still going to be very good.
There's definitely some. I'm a PlayStation guy, and there's some PlayStation so I'm super excited about. Seeing finally Silent Hill return to where it belongs. That's my favorite survival horror franchise of all time, and that made my heart just like almost explode out of my chest seeing that, man. And all these little hints and rumors we're getting for my favorite RPG series return, Suikoden. There's been a lot of little Easter eggs ever since this last Suikoden day, so I'm hoping that comes back. Like a surprise or something.
Yeah, they had some pretty good surprises on the Xbox showcase, but I'm not going to spoil anything here. You're just going to have to watch tomorrow.
Chicken. All of the information is either above or below, depending on where you're watching. Everybody has their links. Yeah. And awesome. I do want to advertise our new merch line that we have out. I got my first. I'm terrible at doing this on these screens.
There's two versions of the shirt, by the way.
Yeah. It's the same as up in the corner. It has that little camp owl light. And it has, you can get a camper or a counselor shirt. And that's up on our site. We have like the link to our TeePublic as well as just a generalized owl light logo.
Yep.
Sort of thing.
A lot more merch coming up soon, but that was one of my favorite. That was actually something that I really wanted Dell to create for me, and like, oh my god, it was amazing. Fun. And whether it's camper or counselor, actually says it across the top of the back of the shirt too. So,
and it's TeePublic, so you can get them in shirts, stickers, coffee cups, iPhone cases, whatever you want.
They even have like dog dishes, like cat and like whatever pet dishes, like and stuff like that you can get for it. It's crazy.
I don't think there are pet dishes.
No, there is an option for it. There's actually an option in there that I've seen it.
You can get a baby onesie.
Yeah, the baby onesies. Those are adorable. Those are just totally adorable, man.
So, anyway,
what about your week? You can't escape this.
My week,
highlights.
My week has consisted of trying to get a lot of things done, doing some reading, and then catching up on more reading because after I got done reading some of Rob's stuff, I was into anthologies in some of them, and so I was reading more. I was over on, I think I was on Splash Pages and The Dorkening and Midweek Geeks this week. I can't remember. I've been doing a lot of stuff over there, and there's just been some rough weeks. And then trying to write and staring at a screen and going, got this great idea. It's fabulous. And the words are right here. And so I spent a lot of time doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And not actually anything done. Although I did figure out something. People, there's an ongoing, it's a joke, but it's an actual thing. I need to read about, I've averaged it out as, and this is something I didn't even think about until Steve mentioned it the other night on Splash Pages. As writers, we think in terms of word count instead of page count a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I need to read an average of about 20,000 words a day to settle in on everything. That just makes me comfortable. And people are like, oh my God, and it's like 40 pages, guys. That's all it is. Yeah. And if you count it out in, pardon me, in comic books, based on the amount of letters or the amount of words that Stan Lee had initially decided to put into each panel, you average out to about 200 words per page. On the, you have the kablooey page that only has one word on it. But so it's only like 4 or 5 comics or 40 book pages a day. but I was doing all this math on stuff, and it turned out that I was reading like 360,000 words when I've been doing some of my comic book marathon things. So that was something I did learn. That is still a comfortable range for me.
Nice.
But so that nobody thinks that I'm like some sort of superhero, 40 pages a day is not like something that people should be in awe of. That's just like flipping through a short story real quick, you know. So
it's like a Goosebumps book, you know, like maybe 2 Goosebumps books.
Yeah, something like that.
A small dent in a Stephen King novel.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's a lot more than that, but if I read less than that, it's when I have some problems. But speaking of reading, I'm going to segue this into we're going to tell some stories tonight.
What about my week?
Your week? Oh shit!
See, I'm talking to you.
I ignore Raz.
I'm right here, and she's already forgetting about me. Man,
Who's here? What? I didn't. Was there somebody talking?
That's revenge for when
for him
had Rob
messing
on
with,
and you couldn't hear me at all for real, and I was just saying random shit. Yeah, that's my payback. I'll take it.
Raz has
was
been
kinda
fucking
fun.
with me all week. That's what's been going on.
Oh my god, I had a weird week, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm finishing my this class like 2 weeks early. Like my final is now done, and it's not due until like next week. I've got all my final week stuff out of the way. Like, so I'm gonna have like 4 weeks off where I'm not doing anything school related because like 2 weeks between semesters, only 2 weeks between semesters. Like, so I'm getting all this shit done early to kind of like chill. Well, I was gonna chill. I got a lot to do now, but so that was cool. I think the weirdest thing happened. I wanted to mention it. I don't want to like talk about it for a long time. Or actually give the person's name if you know who this is. Cool. If not, you can look it up yourself. It's a major headline in the news right now. Somebody that helped me early on in my my no sleep and creepypasta writing career. Really, what everybody thought was a super solid guy. He always had great advice. Was very kind. Would like hurt himself almost help people. Multiple major network deals for short stories he wrote on Reddit. I mean, the guy was brilliant, talented. The body of his wife was just identified in many pieces, and it turns out that I guess he did it.
Wow.
And they were unable to identify her for about 5 or 6 months. So myself and many other people, I've actually written a collective book with this man. It's hard to take. It's not even though, you know, this was the nice, quiet kid next door. This was someone that was loud, that had a personality, that was kind, that did charity work, that reached out to so many people, helped so many people that were in really bad places. So when I say that I'm so shocked, I don't even know how to feel. Like that statement's never been truer for me than it is right now. And I just kind of wanted to mention it to reach out in hopes that, you know, maybe we find out that it wasn't him after all, which is obviously what we have to hope for here. But if it is, we also have to send love to, you know, the people that were actually affected by this, the support and you know, he brought a community together, and now our community is pretty broken right now. And we got to pick up those pieces. We got to find a way to, you know, keep going, to, you know, have respect and honor as much as we possibly can in a situation that obviously we can never understand. But it's a loss in many different ways, in many different senses. And I think that's the biggest thing that's affecting me this week, probably.
Yeah, I forgot we were just talking about we found out about it last night.
To everyone out there in the Reddit community, you know, we'll get through this. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot to unpack, a lot to deal with. Just make sure at all time that you're respecting the survivors, because it doesn't matter how you feel or what's going on or what you think. A life was lost in all this. And ultimately, that is what the most important thing is. I'm not going to post it right now because then again, that would give names. But if you know what I'm talking about, or you go and look it up, which it's easy to look up, there is actually a GoFundMe for the survivors of the victims. So that's something that I'm going to be putting some money into probably this week. And if you have it and you want to, you know, you're a part of the community or just something that strikes you hard, you know, it's out there. Again, I'm not going to post it because I don't feel that that's okay for me to do. Not being a family member, that just seems like something I shouldn't do. But it's easy to find headline news the last 3 days. So
if you're a member, if you know much about Reddit or the No Sleep community, you can go onto Reddit. There's No Sleep OOC, out of character, is one of the subreddits there, and it's a pinned post about dealing with the tragedy, and there are links to it there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I just again,
and there's no names mentioned,
Yeah,
nothing like that. So you can go ahead and look at things there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I'm not trying to be vague. I'm just trying to be as respectful as possible, but wanted to mention it. My heart goes out to the whole community and to everyone, and we gotta come together on that. That was my week. Literally, like excited about homework. Terrible thing happened. Shit. That's where I'm at today.
Yeah. So we're gonna bring things back up again, and
Potentially.
We're going to get into some storytelling.
Good luck following that.
Well, I'm following that.
He's following himself. So
okay.
I wouldn't have brought this up if one of you guys were going first, because that would have been a dick move. I wouldn't do that to you. I love you guys too much. Myself, story, right?
I'm afraid a dog just got hit outside, and now the comedy stylings of Raz. Okay.
Basically. All right. So I'm going to pull Raz up.
Rough.
Yeah.
I'm ready for my case up.
I'm going to pull Raz up. The rest of us can go on mute. And let's hear some stories, folks. Everybody buckle in.
Okay. Some people have heard this story before in other places, but I've never actually said it on any Owl Light show. And of course, now I've never said it on the Owl Light Network. So we'll play the usual game at the end. Every time I tell a story, we decide whether it's true or not, or what is and isn't, because it's just fun for me. This one is very near and dear to my heart. Those that know me know that I grew up in a very strange environment, from my mom being to kind of the indie horror scene, teaching me a lot about that, to just paranormal things, being obsessed with cryptids. So I've experienced a lot of insane things, even at an early age. And the craziest thing that I've ever still to this day survived is growing up in the house, my childhood home. It's located here in the grand city of Riverside, Ohio. And believe it or not, although I've written stories and a collection recently I released about Riverside, Riverside's a real city. You can look it up. It's right next to Wright-Patt Air Force Base. So it's super easy to find on maps. And yeah. The house I lived in was, every neighborhood has this house. It's the house that's creepy. You get a weird vibe from. You dare your friends to walk up onto the front porch or what have you. Just kind of freak each other out. At Halloween time, you tell stories. But every neighbor has a different story about the house. The weird thing about it is when you grow up in that house and you're in elementary school, especially. Actually, then, I was in late elementary school. I got to hear these stories from other people about my home. Some of them not even realizing that's actually where I lived, because I try not to broadcast that I lived in the crazy house. Not a lot of people knew about it for obvious reasons. So at one point in time, they said there was a family of serial killers that lived in my house. My house was haunted and like the walls bled because we were right next to airport, or to the Wright-Patt Air Force, which is a super weird area where I live. There was alien stories, and you name it. There was some kind of crazy, fucked up story about this house and the family that lived before it and the family that lives there now. I would come home from school and ask my mom about these things that I was hearing, and she'd freak out like, "Where are you hearing this from? School? Don't they know you live there?" No. So that was always an awkward, dinner conversation every night. It's, "What did you hear about our house today?" But it really was a crazy place. It really was a very dangerous home. I think I'm actually going to start the whole house series and start telling all the stories, starting with this episode, because I kind of shied away from a lot of that. But it seems like a good time to just get into it. So I'm going to start at the end of the house series, because it's probably, I think I've done one other one about, what was it? Spotlight Tag. I did one about Spotlight Tag previously, but that's the only one. I want to start at the end because it's kind of the most profound, and everything that leads up to this, although some events were far worse than this was one that shaped my life up until my father's passing many years after this event. And it shaped a lot of our lives, I think. And sometimes telling things in the backwards order is a little bit more fun, because it gives listeners a chance to go back and to listen to different episodes. And, I think I might even just tell things out of order just for my own personal amusement, and just to make you go back and watch things in order, because So again, a lot of paranormal things happen in this house. We had pets that would just randomly, mysteriously die anytime my mom was around for no reason. We had, incidences with building box forts. We had shadow men. We had creatures in the woods nearby, missing children. I mean, our neighborhood, our very small portion of neighborhood, our neighborhood, which is a very small portion of our town, was probably the most fucked up place in all of Riverside and into the surrounding cities, actually. And no one knows why. I mean, it's not Native American land. It's not, no more people than usual have died than anywhere else in the world. So there was never like anything that you could fundamentally just point your finger at and say, oh, well, that's the problem and that's what it is. Or, oh, you have creaky boards. Oh, you have leaky pipes. It was none of that. Everyone in my family was either an automotive mechanic or did some kind of construction or home construction or a combination of all the above. So when there was a sound we couldn't identify, they went under the house with flashlights. They, busted open some drywall. They fixed it. So these were not sounds of a settling house. Nothing we experienced there could have been explained by that. My dad was out of town a lot. He worked for a company that basically built assembly lines and entire setups for other warehouses and companies. So he would, I think, go to probably China more than any other country. And this was during a time where he was out of town in China initially. He was also big. He was one of those fishermen that was on TV back in the day, like doing bass tournaments. He was the president of his Bassmasters Club. So even if he wasn't gone for work, he was out fishing. He had a hard time believing a lot of the things that we experienced. He claimed that he never saw anything. He never had any weird moments. And while it affected all of us equally, I tended to get a little bit more of the violent side of things. And it was always my dad saying, oh, well, I heard about this thing called night tremors. That's probably what it is. Or night terrors. That's probably what it is. Or you have an overactive imagination. Mom would say, but I experienced it too. And he'd just be like, well, and he'd shrug and change the subject. So it's important to point this out because he never believed anything we said, anything anyone else said. His own mother had an experience there and he wouldn't believe her. So like he was very, very against any of this. And my dad was 6'3", built like a biker. One look from him had you so terrified you'd want to hide in the corner and pitch yourself. Like he was that guy. He was an angry guy. But he also was terrified of horror films. Like he wouldn't watch a horror film. He would have nightmares that he just couldn't stand it. So he was anti-horror, which was weird in my home growing up because he was the only one that just didn't participate in horror of any kind. So it made some sense that he would deny these things, but after a while, that denial got really difficult for him to pull off. So one particular weekend, again, he's out. He's in China. He's working for they're designing all the assembly lines for Black & Decker, and this is probably a 1991. Actually, the exact year, it's 1991. We did what we always did. When he was gone, we would all, me and my brother, my sister, and my mom, we would sleep in the living room because we didn't want to. We knew that if we went to our individual bedrooms and slept when he was gone on weekends, like overnights, that's when the house was at its worst. That's when the most fucked up things always happened. So mom would sleep on the couch, and we'd make pallets on the floor. We'd just grab a bunch of blankets, sleeping bags, stuffed animals, throw them on the floor, and that's where we'd sleep. But we had a ritual where we'd go to this place called Meijer. I think some people call it Publix. There's, it's basically a big old grocery store that also at the time rented movies. So we would just go rent a bunch of horror films, get popcorn. They had a candy aisle, like candy by the pound. So we would go nuts with it because, it was extremely cheap in the 80s and 90s. And we'd just make a whole weekend of it. And what I remember most about our movie choices, it was the first time that I ever saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show. My mom had been a big fan, for years, and she decided, it's time to watch this movie. And explain why I'm pointing out the films because that's how memory works. You remember one thing that triggers another event that triggers a whole series of mental pictures in your brain. And for someone like me that has eidetic memory and brain damage, that's how I live my life. I don't know I know something until it's triggered. So remembering the movies, remembering things like that is kind of my way of taking this snapshot of the world around me in that time. So not only did we get to watch Rocky, but it was a double feature that night. We also, for the first time, got to watch Arachnophobia, which just came out like the year before. And everyone except just about everyone but me was afraid of spiders. So I'm laughing the whole time. And we were having a good time. Point is, we had a great time. We ate all the candy we could eat. We got some pizza. We got popcorn. We had a good night. It was the best night that we had in years without my dad being there. Nothing had bothered us. Nothing bad had happened even that week leading up to it. Things actually seemed for the first time to be dying down. And that's also important because, again, I'm telling you that this is the end. This was the end of us being in this home. So we were lulled into this basically false sense of security. Towards the end of Arachnophobia, my brother saw this shadow dart out from our very super long hallway that leads right to where we are. Because we have this giant living room, this very weird, creepy, narrow hallway. You'd pass this door to your right, which was mine and his room. Then you go all the way rest down the hall. There's this big square, and all the other bedrooms and bathrooms led off of that square in the back. So we were always closer to the front of the house, which is where all the worst shit happened. Me and my brother, when we were in our bedrooms. But he sees it dart down the hall, and he knows it. And when you see something, you say something, because that's how we all know we got to get ready for a whole world of shit. I'm used to looking everywhere, but I keep forgetting my camera is moved now. So if I'm looking off screen that way, my bad. So he sees it. My sister said she was too afraid to say anything, but she'd seen it twice already come from the other side of this from the kitchen. Usually, if you saw a shadow, you'd see one or two, but there was already 3, maybe more. We're on guard now. We finished the movie, but we're kind of hesitant. And not to be cliche, but there was a storm that night. It was literally the middle of summer. It was just it was hot out, nasty storm, humidity was crazy, middle of Ohio, well, Southwest Ohio. And I remember having to go to the bathroom so bad that I was just about to piss myself. I had no other option than that. Like, I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I was so terrified because the light switches for this impossibly long hallway were, of course, at the very ends of each hall. And I couldn't flip the one that was on our side of things because Dad was in the process of doing some rewiring, and he had not replaced those switches yet. So I was going to have to walk at 9 years old down this creepy ass long hall with sightings already for the evening and a storm, and I wasn't having it. So my mom realizes that I've got this look of pain on my face. She finds out that I've got to go to the bathroom that badly. She's like, "I'll take you, but we just have to keep our eyes open." So we walk down this creepy long ass hallway together. We're holding hands. We get to the end. The storm's starting to get a little crazier. You're seeing the lightning's brighter than the lighting lights we have on, even in the house. We get to the end of the hallway, and just as we get to the end of the hallway, the power goes out. So we can now not even switch on that creepy ass hallway light. There's no light to switch on. I'm getting more nervous. Mom was like, "Do you want me to go in the bathroom with you?" And I'm like, "I'm 9, I'm a boy." I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm cool. I got this." And luckily there was a window, like a high up window, so what light there was kind of outside. It wasn't completely dark. So she's like, "Okay, I'm going to stand right here on the other side of this door. If you need me, just holler. Don't lock it. I'll come in." Cool. I did as I was instructed. I did not lock the door. And as I went to go farther into the bathroom to the toilet, I noticed something just seemed really odd about the mirror. I glanced over, but it was suddenly fine again. I glanced away, and out of my peripheral vision, it looked like there was 2 people staring at me from the mirror. So my head jumps back, and I look. It's normal again. Whatever. Active imagination. I know that's a problem with myself. So I go to the bathroom. I go to wash my hands, and I look up, and I am seeing the corpses of my brother and sister staring back at me in the mirror, just looking deeply into my eyes. Like, if I had a soul, they'd probably be staring right into it at that point in time in my life. And I screamed. I was obviously even more terrified. Thankfully, I just emptied my bladder, so that was a plus. I start screaming. My mom starts banging on the door. The door has somehow locked itself, except for when you look at the mechanism, it was a push button lock. So you can clearly see that the button's not pushed in. And if you know anything about those old locks, which are still somewhat in use today, you cannot turn the handle all the way if that lock is actually engaged. It will not allow you to turn the handle all the way because that's what triggers the thing in the strike plate to open the door. You could turn the handle the whole way. You could hear the piece that lets go of the strike plate moving inside the door. It was not opening. We had never had issues with this door. There was no slants in the floor. There was no swelling of the wood to make it stick. Nothing. This was a perfectly engineered, oak framed and interior bathroom door. There was nothing wrong with it. And finally, my mom basically had to damn near hockey check it open. And as soon as she touched, hit with her shoulder, the door just opened. Didn't pop open, didn't make a sound. I saw the knob just turn and open, except for she wasn't touching the knob. She was just shouldering the door. And just as she burst in, I looked at her and I looked back, and what I saw in the mirror was gone. And now my brother and sister are screaming in the living room, blood curdling, about to die, screaming from our living room. So Mom grabs me by the hand again, jerks me along with her. We're running down this hall, and we get past mine and my brother's bedroom door, which is open into sheer blackness, except for you're seeing the lightning outside. So there's little lights in different places, like where we're going towards, where we're passing. It's flickers. And as we go past that door, 5 shadows slide out. They're now on either side of us in the hallway, following us down this hall. We're running now, and they're not. They're just slowly individual shadows. So dark, they were actually darker than the dark around us and were like that dense enough to see. Except as we went farther down, they were no longer on the wall. They were just there, walking across the floor. We get to where my brother and sister, they're screaming. There are probably at least 6 or 7 coming out of the kitchen towards them. So we're now trapped in the living room. You can either go into the kitchen, straight ahead of us, to the right, the nope hallway is what I'm going to call it right now, the nope hallway, or the front door. Mom said, door now. We ran to that front door. And we were the kind of family that used to power outages in a poor neighborhood. So you always had flashlights right front door, like on little hooks where you could easily find them if the power went out. Like, some people had having different places in their home. That was our emergency station on the hooks right by the front door. We just instinctively grabbed flashlights because that's, it's what you do when you're terrified and it's the dark. And we tried to open the front door. Mom was like, oh crap, it's locked. She unlocks it, tries to open it, just like that bathroom door. It's not moving. The door turns all the way completely. There's no swelling in the frame, no swelling in the door. This door should just be opening. It should just open. There's not even a screen door. It should just open. It will not. What's in the kitchen is gone. These figures that were now, again, were also no longer standing on the wall when we got close to the front door, but the figures in front of us are just gone. But now all the ones we counted before are behind us, coming out of the hall, pushing us towards this door. So now we can't go back down the nope hall. We can't go out the front door. There's the side door. Okay, we got a side door. To get to the side door, you have to go through this giant room, which is a combination dining room kitchen. It's an eating kitchen is what they call it. It's huge. We had to go through there and go towards the inner back of the house. The problem with that is we had one of those rooms that I know other people have had rooms like this. It's our utility room, right? A lot of people have the utility room. You got your water heater there, possibly. You got maybe your washer dryer. We had our washer and dryer and our water heater. There were no lights. There was one light in this room, an overhead light. There was no windows. You could put in the brightest bulb known to man and hook up work lights and plug them into the walls in there, and that room was never fully lit. It just could not be fully lit. And it always frustrated the shit out of my dad anytime he'd have to go and rewire outlets because there was just never light in this room. So we were already terrified of that room, and eventually you'll find out more about why I was terrified of that room. But we get in there, and the dryer's going. The dryer. There's no power. We try to flip on the light back there just to see if maybe just the breakers are out on one part of the house, because that happens. And nope, there's no power, but the dryer is going. We look at the dryer. We look back the way we came, and now there is about 15 or 16 of these shadows. Again, no longer on the walls, just standing in the middle of the kitchen, slowly, painstakingly slowly, walking towards us. No time for the dryer. We turn around. Mom is able to actually open the big door, and we think we got this. But we had one of those strong security style screen doors on that side of the house because that was the easiest side for someone to break into if they were going to break in. And that wouldn't open. And this is such an easy to open screen door. It's the one where you just push the little black piece in the bottom and in, and the door just opens. Even easier to open than any of the other doors in this house. No way for it to swell because it's metal and plastic. Won't open. Mom said she couldn't open. She needed help. So me and my brother were small enough to get on either side of her and push. My sister's behind us, pushing us into the door to help. So you've got, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 13-year-old, and a mom just all shoving, slamming, kicking this door. And it feels like someone is pushing it from the other side is the only thing it felt like. Because you get that moment where it would start to give a little bit, and it would just slam back. And the momentum would just kind of like make you take a step back. So we were not getting out this door. We just kind of stood there because we could breathe fresh air. We were right there. Our driveway was right there. Our car, the passenger car door, if I opened that door, I'd take 2 steps and I was in that car. The doors were unlocked. We were looking right at it. We had no way to do this. There was just no way out. So my brother, and I still to this day never found out why he did this. He went to the dryer and he opened it. And inside the dryer was a pair of shoes that my sister lost 4 years prior in a lake about 30 miles away from our house. This exact pair of shoes. And you might think, oh, back then a lot of shoes looked the same. And you're right, they did. A lot of shoes looked the same back then. We didn't have the styles and the choices we have now, but my sister always wrote in magic marker on the inside of her shoes. I don't know why she did this, but she always wrote her name and whatever her favorite song was or something that she liked at that time. And like anything she loved, like her jackets had these labels in them, her shoes, like, books, important things. Not our shirts, but just normal important things. And right inside the band of the shoes, 1 second. Sorry about that. Right on the band of the shoes was not only her name, oh, also she would include her age, and her favorite New Kids on the Block song, which was actually Popsicle at the time. I remember that was her favorite song because it was one of the ones that Joey sang. So that was on the label of the shoes. These were the exact shoes that no one had seen in 4 years. No explanation, no idea how they got there. It seemed like it was just, it felt like it was meant to be a distraction because by the time we turned around, nothing's in the kitchen. Kitchen's empty. Awesome. Perfect. Escape. Where can we go? Okay, we were in the living room. We didn't try the windows. The ones in the kitchen weren't as easily accessible. So we run back into the living room and we see that the nopal is still a no-go. They're still there. There's still plenty of them there. But once we go back into the living room, all the ones that I guess were distracting us with the dryer in the kitchen were now coming back out of the kitchen. So now they were all. And we're looking up, and I'm a kid, so my number on this might be a little off because it seemed pretty overwhelming, but it seemed to me that there were probably close to 2 dozen of these things just standing in the middle of the room, like around the edges of the room, just watching us. Like if you see like Harry Potter, they walk around the corridor and you got your knight statues everywhere, but just replace the knights with freely standing shadows, basically. And it was like they were standing guard or sentinel over something, but being very menacing somehow. Although they never spoke, you couldn't see features. They were just there. And then slowly, they started moving in at angles around the sides of us to the point where now we're just seeing a wall of shadow. No matter where you turn to look, you can see the ceiling just fine and the flashes of lightning, but you couldn't get to the windows anywhere. There was no way out. And this felt like it went on for an hour. But honestly, to a 9-year-old brain, in all reality, it was probably 2 minutes. If I had to be super real about, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes at best. And before you knew it, we were touching each other. We were standing so close because we were completely boxed in by just walls of shadows. The closer they got, you'd hear, but just whispers. But those whispers turn into words, unintelligible at first. And then I remember hearing my brother and sister just screaming, worse than they were when we were down the nopal. My mom is sobbing and just screaming and crying, and I hear one phrase in my ear. It's, "You'll never be alone again." And then nothing. I blacked out. I woke up the next morning. They all woke up. We had like bruises, abrasions of handprints. I had a big one like right across my collarbone, one on my right side. My mom had one over her mouth, and my brother and sister just kind of scattered around. I think my brother had one on his left arm. My sister had one on her right thigh for some reason. But that's how we woke up and terrified. And we tried all the doors again. None of them opened. Mom grabbed the keys and she said, "We're gonna break out through the big window." And the big window in our house you'd think would be in a living room, but we didn't have a picture window like a lot of houses did. For some reason, there was a version of a picture window in my parents' bedroom. So we went to the window. Mom was like, "Let's try it before we break it," but she literally grabbed one of Dad's spare tire irons that he kept in the utility room. She was just going to break the window. She had to, but we tried it, and the window opened. We tried other windows. Just we were just so flabbergasted about why the doors wouldn't open. No other window would open. Only that window, which led right into our backyard. So we opened it. We hopped out. It was, we were there's. It's only a 1-story, you know, home, so it's not like you're jumping out of a very high thing to go through the window. Like I would fall out of the window, and like I think I'd fall a foot maybe before my feet touched the ground. So we got out, went to the car. We went to my her mom's house, my grandma, her mother, and who did not like our house, who had had very many bad experiences in there. Her sister had had bad experiences there. Most of our side of the family had had bad experiences in that house. So she's like, "Stay as long as you need." We stayed right up until my dad came home. We all, as a family, like we always did, we got in the car. We went to the airport to pick him up. Dad was happy to see us. He brought gifts home from China. Oh, you got a kimono. Mom got some actual Chinaware that time, and I got those little clacky balls that you can spin around your hand. First set I ever had. Super cool. I loved them. Uh, we almost forgot how terrifying things were. Just getting gifts and seeing him, and then okay, let's go home. Except for we didn't drive home. Mom drove us to Granny's house, and my dad said, "Listen, I'm jet lagged to hell. I'm exhausted. I would like to go home." And Mom hands him the keys and says, "Good luck." What are you talking about? It's not like he could just call if he was gone for a weekend in China. It was very super difficult. Timing was just terrible. So if something bad happened, there was a way to talk, or to send messages or whatever. But otherwise, Dad just didn't call. So Mom had us go inside, and my grandma was trying to distract us, but we can clearly hear my mom and my dad fighting outside. They're arguing. Dad is tired. He's just tired of the bullshit. He's tired of us making up all these stories. If he ever hears a story from any of us again, there's going to be trouble. Like, I mean, there's threats. There's like, what the fuck is going on right now? It leaves with my dad getting pissed and slamming a car and driving back to our home. And Mom, she comes inside and she says, "We're going to stay here for probably a while. We'll figure it out." And we're kids. We're already terrified from what happened the night before. Now we have the highs and lows of getting gifts, watching our parents fight, and then we just kind of forgot about it. We played rummy. We watched game shows with grandma and with granny. We had a good time. As best as we could, I guess, in that moment. And then it was about a little after 3:30 in the morning. I hear a car door, and I'm sleeping on the couch in my granny's living room. And I woke up first, and I went to the window. Hey, that's our car. That's Dad. Actually, it was a truck. That's Dad's truck. I got excited. I woke up. Mom was like, "Hey, Dad's here." And Dad comes and knocks on the door. He walks straight in, doesn't say a word. He sits on the couch, and his face. I've never seen anyone that pale in my life. Certainly not a man who is primarily Sicilian and Cherokee. We don't get pale. we don't get pale, but he was pale, like sickly pale. And he said, "I'm gonna make a phone call in the morning. We've been thinking about moving for a while, and I know I have a friend that's selling their house, and it's still in the same neighborhood, but it's like in the other side of the neighborhood. Not any less poor or more poor than where we were living before. We just couldn't afford to move farther away, but at least wasn't in the part of the neighborhood where that house was." Okay, we didn't think to question it. It's we were young, like we're not going to be taken away from our friends or our school. We're in the same area. Okay, cool. That sounds great. New bedroom. And then he looks at Mom and says, "And I'm hiring a moving company in the morning. We're never stepping foot in that house again." And Mom just kind of nods. Granny wakes up, finds out what's going on. And she says, "That's for the best. You guys can stay here as long as you need." A week later, we were in a new house. It took a week. We closed it. We sold that. Dad sold the house. So I don't know how he sold it that quickly. To this day, I have no idea how he sold it that quickly. But I know that he definitely, we definitely don't still own the house. There's no deed with our name on it. So he literally had to have sold it because otherwise we were too poor to not even be able to afford to move. And the house we moved into was bigger and nicer and had a way bigger yard. So, but yeah, we never had to go inside that house like he promised ever again. But Dad would still never talk about it. Like to this day, I'll be talking to my mom or my sister or somebody and say, "Hey, I was thinking about the old house the other day." And we just talk about it. Like this is normal conversation because of how bad that place was that we just still talk about to this day. And my brother, right up before he passed, would never. I think it always affected him a lot more than anyone else. Right at his end, he struggled a lot more and became obsessed with the house right before he passed away. But when Dad died a couple years after my brother passed, we didn't know he was we didn't know he was dying. He went in because he was having back trouble. It turned out that he'd had a kidney infection he didn't tell anybody about for 9 months, almost 10 months. And that kidney infection turned systemic and it was killing him. But he calls me the night before he dies. It turns out to be like about 3 or 4 hours before he dies and says, "Hey, I'm just in here for a little while, man. Don't come and visit me. You're just gonna piss me off, treat me like an invalid. Get your shit together. I'll be home in the morning. We'll hang out." And I was like, "Dad, I need you to be honest with me. Do I need to be there?" And he said, "I don't want you to be, but if you feel like you need to be, I'm not going to be a dick about it." Okay. I drove immediately there. You know, Before he'd just screamed and been pissed, no, no, no. But now I'm hearing doubt in his voice. So I show up and it's just me and him in the room. My wife at the time, my ex-wife now, left to help my mom with a couple things because she was going to try and stay the night at the hospital, but they had to go back and get some stuff. And it was just me and him alone. And I said, Dad, we exchanged the normal potential end of life talk, like what happens if you pass? What do you need me to do? I'm the oldest, or I'm the youngest son, but I was the most responsible of the children. What do you need me to do to take care of Mom? We had the normal conversations, I guess. And finally, I said, but there's one thing that I need you to be honest with me about it. This is the last time we're going to talk. I have to know. And he said, what? I'll tell you anything you want. What is it? I said, the house. Why did we move? And he looked at me and he, come here. I lean down and he whispers into my ear, because you'll never be alone again. And I just stopped, because that was the same thing that had been whispered into my ear, when I lost consciousness. And I just started crying, like just bawling my eyes out. Because the more and more I thought about that voice from back then, that voice that haunted my nightmares still, over 3 decades later, it was my dad's voice that day. But he had never whispered those words to me ever in my life, ever, for me to know what that would sound like exactly in that moment. But they were the same words echoed in the same pattern, the same tones, everything as that night. And he stopped and he looked surprised. He just had this look of surprise on his face. And I'm bawling my eyes out, not sure what that means. I don't know what's happening. My mom shows up with my wife at the time, and I just look at him. And they know that there's something bad has happened. They're freaking out. What? Did the doctor come in? I'm in, my dad flatlines, and he passed away. And it was the hardest thing now, is still not knowing what that meant. Why did I hear his voice so many years, decades earlier, his exact voice, and the same exact pain, the same exact confusion, the same exact words, you'll never be alone again. And now, and I'll never know. I'll never know. And that's the sad part about it. I'll never know why that happened. I'll never understand it. And I still drive by this house. It's in the neighborhood I grew up in, man. It's still in the same part, the other half of the neighborhood my mom lives in today still. Every time I go there, I've got to drive past it. I've got to see the playhouse up on the stilts that's in disrepair in the back. I've got to see the cracked driveway, the old broken bricks that make up the whole exterior. And I got to think about what's in there. Who lives there now? Because a new family lives there. Sometimes more than one a year. And that was 1991, and still multiple families sometimes live in this home a year. It's still always on the market all the time. I keep thinking to myself, what if one day I go back? What if one day I can, pick up a flyer and do an open house? Or would it still all be there? Would I walk in that door and see all of them just come out and greet me? Would there be a handshake, a slap in the face? Would there be some proof that I was just absolutely insane and none of this happened? And every day I live with that. Do I go there? When I see it for sale, do I put in an offer? Should I live in this house again? And that's the biggest thing, is I think I would live in this house again if I had the money and the opportunity, because this house calls to me like nothing has ever called to me or ever will. I can live in another state and a half for periods of time, but I always come home. And I think, because, Dayton's a great place to live. The cost of living is so low. There's so many opportunities. There's horror. There's all these things. But I don't think it's any of that. I think it's that house. I think that every time I start to get just a little farther away, that house finds a way to call me back home. So I think I'd live there again. I think if it came up and I had the money, I think I would buy it. If not even to live there, so no one else had to live there again. But yeah, that's my story.
Wonderful job, Raz. We're going to show exactly. This is the reaction that I think most of us are having. And Rob, you need to unmute yourself, by the way. But hey, East Coast Hunters, real quick. Hey, Jeremy. You're still welcome to join if you want to. And yeah. And so we get to hear these kind of wonderful stories from Raz. And I feel I am blessed that I have heard a lot of them. This is one of the examples of, like, instead of telling the traditional campfire story that everybody has heard, that, by the way, since we are the Owlite, we're all about teaching about storytelling as well as experiencing storytelling. But Raz has the unique situation of where he has had a lot of crazy shit happen to him in his life. And so we get to hear a lot of things that are pretty much grounded in reality and that he has just gone through.
And you guys know I make some shit up. I've admitted that I make some of my content, but I can tell you that the only thing that was not true, only one item, And that was I did hear the words "You'll never be alone again," but it was not my father's voice, and he did not say that phrase on his deathbed. That is the only thing I actually added to that, and there are multiple people that will tell you that same story in the same way they're still alive. It was an insane situation, and literally it was a week. We were in that new house, and I've seen stories like, oh, you had a haunted house moved up because it was haunted, and it seems so fucking unbelievable. Let me tell you, but there are people like me all over the country that had to leave a house as a child because of how bad their home was. Like, and it's nuts to think about it. That is a real thing. Yeah, that was the only thing that I 100% fabricated.
Jenny, I'm scared for you. That is a great story. The tiny one says you sound comforting and fell asleep. If Raz's childhood stories are comforting, I'm so sorry.
It's the tone of my voice. I'm telling a story.
There's also a rule that I'm sure we'll encounter sometimes, which is never let Raz's mom babysit your pets.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one night. Yeah.
James?
I have a question. So, what are your thoughts on the Arachnophobia remake?
I'm super excited because you know why? John Goodman is slated to be a part of it, and that's the only thing I give a shit about.
Really?
Yep.
I'm just glad it's a Bloomfield.
Yeah. Oh yeah. John Goodman is still a personal hero of mine, man. It's King Ralph all the way.
Awesome. I am excited for it too, but since you mentioned it, I had to ask.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to keep tying this back together. She doesn't understand full English. It makes sense why she would.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do have a soothing voice when I try to. I used to be a radio DJ, so I can get into that voice that just chills you out and calms you down.
And
are you ready? This summer,
Coming this summer,
Kermit the Frog is a pimp. But
hey yo, Kermit the Frog here.
my finger smells like pork.
For those of you who are familiar with the Dorkening with Brandon Powers, Powerful Brandon, on Midweek Geeks and some other shows, he has this great, wonderful, soothing voice as he's talking about things and explaining comic books, and he starts getting passionate about it. But then when he gets upset at something, he just flips and goes into this. I've tried to listen to podcasts of some of their shows at night because I'm like, oh yeah, I would love to hear the story of this Superman putting me to sleep or this Batman episode putting me to sleep. And they drifting off until all of a sudden, and of course, fucking Bruce Banner isn't around, who's the only person they could, and you're just like, oh god, I'm awake now. It worked, but he has the most soothing voice ever if he's like
really
narrating things. I think he really needs to go into narration at some point. Sorry, I'm getting off track. So yeah, as I said, we're just, this is kind of our new night of branding since we're starting things over again. So we want to make sure everybody understands that Owlite Brand is all about storytelling. We have interviews and things like we have an interview with Rob Smales that we just did the other night, and we'll be back up again soon. And we do unboxings and things, and we try to get in touch with authors. And so we want to bring the stories to you via things like the campfire here, or just any way we can. That's what we're about. And as well as bring in some educational things about like why storytelling is important and what different aspects of it, some people get, some people, why just writing something down isn't necessarily storytelling.
Yeah.
And the difference between storytelling and narration, all these different things.
Oh yeah. And so we'll have all that content back up on our YouTube probably in the next week or two. We're hoping there will be some content that you see that we did that might not make it back on, but don't worry about that. We're gonna have a lot of other shows on other days too.
Yeah, we might revamp some of the older stuff because we've learned since then. So we've learned how to make things a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
So, James, where'd you care to go next?
Well, I can. Otherwise, I can cede the floor to our lovely guests here, even though I'm technically a guest too. But, I'm family.
James is in the Owlite. We haven't announced all that accuracy there, but welcome, James.
Yeah, we can officially announce
Owlite Network.
That pleases me.
Hold on. I have something for this. I've been trying to find a reason to use it, but I have something for this momentous occasion. And here we go.
And there was much rejoicing.
That was just for you.
And the crowd goes wild.
Oh, you're good at that.
Wow. Anyway, so I can go next. So that's fine with you guys.
I was just gonna kind of wrap us around in a clockwise
Okay.
circulation. That works.
That'll work. I'm going to start with the poem first because the next one. Okay, there's a trigger warning on this. I don't know if anybody else wanted to handle that, but the second part, there's going to be a trigger warning. But the first thing I'm going to read is a poem that I actually wrote for Dell a couple of years ago. It's very short. And I asked for permission. She said, okie dokie. So here we go. Try not to point and laugh too much. Her eyes are obsidian fire, shimmering, intense and captivating, burning a hole through my soul. Her hair dark as Odin's ravens, a crown for her mind and thoughts. She wields her pen as the dragon fang, with its sapphire blade and hilt forged from dragon's teeth, creating worlds and dimensions with meticulous abandon. A being that would make the gods tremble, and the mortals stare in awe and wonderment. Tender soul, housed in the body of a demigod, the beauty of which I cannot begin to fathom. Thank you. So, that was the poem. If you guys want to react now would be the time.
I think we're gonna let you go all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to talk about both things when you were done. Yeah.
Okay. This next one is a blog post. This is a completely true story, and it's something that I have to premise with between the ages of 12 and 15. I was in and out of psychiatric ward about 5 times. This was between the years of 1986 and 1989. It got to the point where I've been in there enough times that the nurses started taking bets about how long it was going to be before I would get back there. And when I found that out, I was kind of miffed because, first they were because of that, and also I wasn't making any money off of this betting here about me. So what happened was essentially the whole come to Jesus moment. It kind of kicked me in the crotch to rethink my life choices as a tender 15-year-old. But the entry was titled Notable Dates on the Calendar of Dread, July 1989. A few people who know me well know I have a rather peculiar aversion to touching anyone and being touched in return. Hugging, especially, is an act that I would avoid, whether it was giving or receiving, unless under special circumstances. Even then, I'm very wary of doing so, making minimal contact, making sure that the act doesn't extend past too long, a second or so. Of course, normally this so-called quirk of mine is looked upon as something not at all strange. Really, what's creepier, the one who doesn't hug or the one who hugs anyone at the drop of a hat? Exactly my point. However, having the added vocation of attending churches where it is expected of the congregants to engage in the affectionate yet platonic act of touchy-feely, more than one eyebrow has been cocked when I suddenly vacate out of the sanctuary briefly to either use the restrooms or to freshen up my coffee cup. It used to be I would step outside for a quick pass with the cancer sticks, but that's long behind me now. At the onset of the greet your neighbor portion of the service and wait out the love fest, there were some places that took this to mean I was somehow spiritually deficient, but that's another story entirely. So, what exactly was it that caused me to bristle at the hand laid on my shoulder absent-mindedly? Why is it my first instinct when confronted with the inevitable unwanted hug to duck, dodge, and dash? Why is it, as a guy who's been stocky most of his life, I'm so great at contorting my gelatinous frame to make for the minimum amount of physical contact, even in the most congested and crowded of public places? Well, normally these questions are met with a pleasant none of your bloody business and a smile that would haunt your dreams for weeks to come. But now, for no other reason other than I'm feeling in a random blogging mood, I shall share with you all reading this, the secret behind my aversion to physical contact with the rest of the human race. It happened on my 5th and ultimately final stay at the juvenile psychiatric ward in Omaha. I was 15 and a very different person then. Let's just say young and excessively stupid, coupled with a cocky sense of indestructiveness and jacked up on the hormones coursing through my chemical makeup. Volatile mix, to be sure, and I ran with it, being a pudgy, foul-mouthed punk. Not that I was brazenly standoffish all the time. No, I had my moments of balanced out, being the manic depressive that I was, and all the medication swimming in me at the time. Doesn't matter, really, because what happened had nothing to do with if I was nice at the time or not. As a matter of fact, what triggered the eventus momentous would be considered quite innocent by some, most in fact. Certainly I did at the time, but to reiterate, none of that matters. Her name was Tracy. Not sure if she spelled it the way I do here or not. She was 17 years of age at the time and was friends with another patient named Jody previous to her interment at the hospital. I mentioned Jody mainly because she was one of the few older patients that was actually kind to me, going out of her way even at times to be so when most of the other kids, well, let's just say didn't. Whereas most, if not all, the kids who wound up on the 4th floor of Emmanuel Hospital were admitted by the psychiatrics, their parents, or more often than not, the combination of both. Tracy was one of the rare residents of 4 East who admitted herself. Her reason for voluntary confinement was a mystery at first, as was her curious aversion to talking with me or even being near myself personally. The answer to the first part was an infuriating and sad one. As to the second part, well, she was habitually raped by her older brother. Admitting herself was the only way she escaped the bastard. The information was freely given on the first group therapy session the Monday after she admitted herself. Of course, there is no fathomable way I can even begin to relate to that kind of horror. Why this was allowed to continue to the point of this girl having to take such matters into her own hands to take herself out of there, I'm speechless. She immediately had my and the group's sympathy and support. What she didn't tell me was, apparently, I looked almost exactly like her brother. As to why this information wasn't as forthcoming as it should have been, I don't know. You would think that having just admitted yourself into what you thought was a safe haven from the darkness and horror of your everyday existence, only to find out that one of your fellow residents resembled the very thing you were trying to escape, this would be some very important information to be supplied with. It's like being the only survivor of the Camp Crystal Lake slaughter, only to be admitted into a hospital room where your roomie is a hockey fanatic that wears a goalie mask nearly all of the time. And I really hope some of you actually get that reference. It's very apt, really. Looking back, I can understand why she wouldn't want to initially let me in on the whole coincidence, kind of, but considering what happened. Okay, so this is rather hard for me to tell, so bear with me. One afternoon, after the lunchtime, the adolescent age kids would go into a gym and just knock around, play, basically what anyone would do after lunch at school. Basketballs were shot at hoops, bouncing balls, running around, playing tag or whatever. You get the idea. This particular afternoon, I remember spying both Jody and Tracy and another girl their age chatting in one of the corners, standing in kind of a circle together. And I thought to my stupid 15-year-old self, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if I snuck up behind them and did the grab tickle under their arms and shout booga booga? And so, due to the fact that I hadn't fully developed the good idea, bad idea filter in my brain at the time, I went over to the nearest girl to me, Tracy, and did just that. She seized up. She folded onto the cold, hard gym floor in a fetal position and began trembling hard. She immediately regressed inside her mind, experiencing a flashback, and a horrible one at that. Only I didn't notice all of this happening because I was jumping around and laughing at the fun goosing I just did. Ah, wasn't that a funny joke? Wait, what's everybody staring at? I'll spare everybody the details of what transpired during the following week. Needless to say, it was a very intense week, to understate things. After being fully assessed of what transpired and why, I tried to help pick up the pieces. I sought forgiveness and received none. While Jody was the only one who forgave me after confronting me about it, Tracy never could. And one other girl, who never really liked me to begin with, is using this incident to justify her snark attacks from then until I was discharged about a week or so later. Now, this changed me profoundly. Keep in mind, this all happened before I gave my life to Jesus. Don't know why I bring that up, I just do. To this day, I don't like to touch or be touched unwantedly. It is an unconscious form of self-flagellation, a sick penance that is neither used or needed in the long run, maybe. All I know is I think about this woman from time to time more frequently than one normally should, really. I pray and wonder if she ever truly escaped the horror of her life and found peace in the only true source of it, like I did shortly after being discharged from that place for the last time. I wonder if she ever gotten around to forgiving that stupid 15-year-old doppelganger of her brother. So many questions, an answer would be nice, but that's not the reason why I write this overwrought blog post. Well, maybe it is. Maybe I needed to finally purge a lingering demon or two, but ultimately I just wanted to expose the reason behind one of my major peculiarities and have a point of reference for those who demand to know why I punched them instead of hugging them at church. The end.
Wow, man,
Wow.
that was a lot of different emotions and feelings in both the poem and the story. There's a lot to unpack in both, especially obviously the second one.
Very quiet here, guys.
Yeah, it takes me like that was that was very profoundly emotional, man. Like all the way across the board. Like,
Yeah.
Reference Scott, and I have to say, I mean, obviously because it was written for me, I love that poem. That it's not one of those like, yeah, it's not something like, hey, I wrote this when I was a teenager. Want to hear a poem? Kind of things. Your imagery is really, really good, and even in your blog posts, I love the way that you write them. I love everything you do. That is a very intense story, and I didn't know that about you. James and I are huggers, but we hug each other, by the way.
But we've built up years of trust.
Yes, we've known each other since high school. He was 1 year ahead of me, so. Sorry, I'm going back and forth on things.
no, you're good. Like, it's not many people have experienced that in life where they've done something they thought was just a completely normal thing or like a joke or what have you, and to see someone react that viscerally to something you really thought was just innocent, unless you've experienced that, that's not something that a person can just understand. But I think the closest that any person could get to understanding it would be listening to the story and reading it or having you perform it right now, because you captured the emotion, you captured the guilt, you captured kind of the inner workings and both your young mind and your adult mind, and you kind of gave us this little journey without even providing over detail about how that shaped you as a person. And that was a lot to say and get across and instill in someone in the short amount of time it took you to read that. And there's a lot of power packed in that, man. It's a strong punch in a tiny little package, and I'm sorry, I'm almost speechless, which is rare for me, because that was just they were both amazing, man. Like, seriously, those were beautiful things that you just read.
Well, then you should get around to reading my story.
Well, now you know why I have it. In my defense, you now know why I have it.
It was a very different story as well, as far as the reasoning. I mean, the reason that most people don't like to be touched, everybody has their own reasons, but I had never even thought about it being because you scared someone else. Usually it's people got
Yeah.
scared because of how they were touched at some point
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Like,
they don't realize that people can build up in their own head like, oh my God, I did this. And
Well,
yeah.
it made me realize do a double take and realize how easy it is to become the monster.
Yeah.
And destroy somebody's life.
and that's very poignant.
Jeremy's here.
You're gonna welcome him, Jeremy.
Yay.
Jeremy!
Great. Now we're going to have to retell these. Go ahead,
No,
Raz.
I heard the story, and I was in the audience for the story.
I was-
I'm sitting
okay.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, you joined us.
Okay, Jeremy.
Okay.
You once lived in a
I was-
house.
No.
I wish it in a
Jeremy's-
cardboard box.
Jeremy's just here to hang out and take in the friendship.
Oh yeah, you're gonna Jeremy it up, man.
Yeah, I was the emotional punch in the gut here. So, do we have any levity?
Well, we do have one more thing. We would like to welcome Jeremy as well into the Owl Light Network.
Yay! And I
'Cause-
gotta play it for him too.
Oh, hold on. There's music.
Yeah, there's
There's
music.
music.
You might have missed it when I played it for James earlier. Here you go.
And there was much rejoicing.
The crowd goes mild.
I actually created my own crowd today. I was making a promo for a show that doesn't really exist,
I love it.
and I put I did my voice like 20 times over, screaming my own name out. It was great.
That is epic, man. Who needs friends when we're us? You know?
Yeah,
We just have our own.
exactly. I was just every time it went by too, it made me smile. I was just like, oh.
I write ads and like commercial, like big comedy commercials sometimes for projects that don't exist, and I just never show them then.
It's a lot of fun. It's a great creative outlet. Like I do it all the time.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm going to keep us on track a little bit. Got some stuff going on. We're going down. Tom Dog, are you ready?
Yes, I am. I am
All
ready.
right. Let's pull them up. We're going to meet
Okay.
everybody else.
I have 3 different ones, but 2 I'm not going to do. Maybe I'll do them some other time or something like that. One is a dream that I randomly have every now and then. It's enough to have Tim Burton make it into a movie or a short. There's another one where I've seen as a little kid seeing a UFO, supposedly seeing a UFO, and to this day I sometimes have visions of getting abducted by aliens in my dreams. But this one that I'm about to share with you is real, and it's a real story and everything like that, and only a select few know about this. And I've seen shadow people, and this all started with the origins and everything like that. I never really explained the origins of how this all happened until now. Back in 2000, I was living with this girlfriend I was with at the time, and we messed around with this Ouija board. And yeah, wasn't like the real one. It was like had Parker Brothers on the side of the box and everything like that. Not getting into that, but I channeled my dear grandfather at the time, who I was really close to, and it freaked me out so much that I broke away from the cursor, and I just like freaked out. I couldn't do anymore. So something in my mind to this day that maybe I don't know if it's true or not, that maybe I left some spirits out and everything. And one particular night, um, we were hanging out with some friends, and drinking and smoking were involved and everything, and we just went out, cruising around. Next thing you know, I see a shadowy figure crossing the street, and it was like a dark area, and I freaked out. And every now and then I would see shadow people, but then it quieted down after that until the death of my other grandfather, who passed away in October 2001, who I was also very close to. At the time, he was living with us, and you know, and there would be times where my room was across from the bathroom where I was staying, where my family and I were staying at, and he would sometimes look and check up on me and make sure I was okay. He would do that as all grandfathers do, and he still does it. But one particular night, I'm home alone by myself. My mom and dad went out, and you know went out for the weekend because um they wanted to get out, and go to New Hampshire for the weekend and visit my family, my aunt and cousins. So one particular night, I'm watching something on TV, and it was dark a little bit, and it was also stormy too. Next thing you know, I'm seeing this shadowy figure cross from the hallway upstairs from the bathroom to my room to check up on me, and it was a shadowy figure of my grandfather. And then he went off into the room that he was sleeping in at night. I freaked out. I turned on all lights, and still, every now and then, late at night, if I were to drive around, or um or if I'm drinking or smoking or whatever like that, and I'm driving around late at night, this make stay awake. um I make sure to stay in a lit area, because if I go into a shadowy area, I know right then and there I'm going to see a shadow person. And I've been seeing it more and more after my grandfather passed away, because some at the time, some of the areas, and so it was it would always be very um dramatic and everything. But I knew that when I saw my shadowy figure of my grandfather, I know that he wasn't going to harm me. He know that he was pretty much keeping the house safe. And but seeing other shadowy figures and everything like that, it really um creeps me out at times and everything. Sometimes I do have a hard time sleeping, um and everything, because sometimes I just got to make sure that there's a lit area. But you know it it was just creepy. But um I saw a few of them um not too long ago and everything. It was getting late, and I was it was my first time um out since my family and I moved into this area, and that I'm at now. And just went out for a ride and everything like that, and just enjoying the weather. And then all of a sudden, there it was. I saw like two shadow people, and yeah, it freaked me out. But um, yeah, it's pretty creepy, and I just hope that you know that with this paranoia, that that none of these shadow people come out to get me later on. And that was my story.
Nice. And yeah, I know where you're coming from there, man. Because my mom has the house that she lives in now is where I took care of my grandparents in. They lived there with her for the last 10 years of her life. And the kiddo is a paranormal magnet. And so there were constantly things flying through the air, even when my grandparents were there, they would experience. But what I pretty much lived there during the last couple of years of Papa's life because grandma had passed and he had a bit of dementia. So he couldn't be left home alone just in case he turned on the stove. It wasn't bad as far as you can say, like, oh, dementia is, it wasn't a good thing, obviously, but it wasn't bad. He would wake up and just be like, where am I? Oh, okay. Okay, I forgot. I'm good with it as long as I get my Danish, in the morning and stuff. But we would hear like the doors would open and you could hear the walker that my grandma would use to walk going around the house, even though the walker was sitting right next to grandpa because he was using it now. And so you have that comforting warm feeling from stuff that they're there, but at the same time you don't want them there all the time or in various places coming up.
Yeah. My question is, was this like an emotional story for you to tell, like something that's like that you're having a hard time processing?
Yeah, yeah, because like I said, I was very close to my grandparents and everything, and I always more so with my grandfather that passed away in 2001 because he didn't really like telling his old war stories and everything because he's a World War II veteran. But with me, he would always make an exception because around Veterans Day or Memorial Day, he would always like to share those stories with me, and I was always intrigued with him. And yeah, he wasn't. I always looked up to him because of that. Yeah, he wasn't like a war hero or anything like that. He was just basically a cook um on a ship, and which I forget the name of when he was stationed in the army. And but he was always packing and everything like that, and but
Man, it doesn't matter if you're a cook or
yeah,
if you served during World War II, you served.
Yeah.
You did your bit.
Exactly. And he always went by the motto shoot first and next questions after. And that was good. And then one night I was getting him prepped for a shower, and I noticed something on his back that I never noticed before. It was a big giant scar on his back. Apparently what had happened, he told me about this. There was like a little explosion and some shrapnel grazed his back and everything, and it scarred him. And he wound up going onto the on the bed there and everything like that. And he actually told me the story about how he once gave up his bed to President Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked is because this is another like magical moment where we get to teach you a little bit of something about storytelling. You guys have heard me tell some fake stories, some real stories, but one of the hallmarks of someone that is telling you a story that they firmly believe is real, like a real story that happened to them, is when Tom was telling the story, his voice quavered a couple times. If you actually paid attention to him, like His eyes got a little bit glassy all of a sudden. He sweated just a little bit more. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did you get that feeling like there was like that feeling of like something almost like running up your spine as you were like telling the story?
Yeah.
See, you get that, then you get that little bit of adrenaline. And when someone is so engrossed in telling a story, even if it seems like the words aren't flowing or it's hard to get out, it's because they're telling you something. They're sharing a very private window into their lives. And storytelling is this really cool thing where we can amuse each other and entertain and have a good time, but we can also learn things about ourselves, the world around us, and it helps us get out things that we've been holding in our chests for a long time. So it's also therapeutic in a way. And these are stories that we can't just go and tell, everybody we meet in town, because there's that stigma of, oh yeah, you guys you're fucking crazy, or or whatever the stigma is in your region or area. But when we all get together and sit down and know there's no rules here, there's no judgments, there's no anything, there's just we're getting together and doing this and showing you guys what it can be. And we get a moment like with Tom right now, it's that just teaches you something that we can't just tell you about. You have to experience it, and us getting to experience that through Tom was really profound tonight, and that's a big part of why we do this and what we're here for. So thank you so much for that, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump into the. Oh wait, James, sorry I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to mention that given this, and first of all, I've never seen a shadow person myself, but I've heard about it, and I do and I don't want to see him, if you get what I'm coming at. Also, everybody who's ever had experiences with Ouija boards, we should bring them all on sometime. Just swap stories, because I've got one.
We'll do a Ouija
I've got
theme
one.
show. That would actually be a lot of fun to do. Actually, that would be cool. We've never actually really discussed doing a theme show before, but that's a great idea, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to hop into the comments real quick. I got Jenny with, I normally see, and this is referring to shadow people, I normally see them as what they were. We came with 2 grandmas, and Josh's coworker's grandma is still here. If they are unsure of me, I don't get to see them. The short shadow person with the wide brim hat left bite marks. He scares me because he is straight black and bites.
Isn't there something about if you see one with a hat, run?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
There are generalized shadow people, and then they also have very specific ones that I don't know if it's a specific actual shadow person or the form that they take upon.
The shadow people have a
themselves.
different name, and it's
But
the shadows of Mortis or shadows of death. They actually do come in many forms. Traditionally, you just see like a lot of what I experienced growing up, just the black masses or what Tom was talking about. But there are moments when one has gained so much, they say, power or energy, which is often feeding from the emotions of the people and things around it, where it becomes something a little bit more. And it starts
it's like
to
a
become-
tulpa.
Yes, exactly. It goes from your basic, dark energy to like almost a tulpa, because the amount that you fed into this thing, and they can start to have their own unique characteristics that set them aside from the other shadows of Mortis or shadows of death or shadow people. And that's when things tend to get bitey or more physical and dangerous.
There we go. Yeah, Jenny was woken up by the bite of a shadow person. I also want to jump back real quick to an earlier comment. This was between when things were being read about for James. My dad would have us read stories he found to teach us lessons the story could do better. James's story teaches something no one ever thinks about. And yeah, and East Coast Honors, this is really hitting home. I lost my best friend and dad going on 3 years ago. Great show. I'm very sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that it gives you a relationship with the show tonight, because that's what this is all about, getting everybody related with each other.
That's why I write.
Something we never really talked about before, and like we might have mentioned it back when we were doing our very first Allight show, which was a very different kind of show back then. The whole reason why I initially came up with the concept of Allight and explained it to Dell, and she jumped on board with me, was because it was kind of formed during COVID, where no one was communicating, no one was connecting, and when we were, it was across computers, but it was not as expansive as we're doing it right now. And it was kind of my way to want to find my own way, despite my own neurodivergence, to connect with the outside world without wanting to actually be a part of the outside world, and get people just getting together and talking. And man, this is, I think, I can't help but say this is the greatest example of anything that I ever dreamed up back then that I've ever gotten to be a part of. So, like, this night's amazing. It's not even over, guys, and it's already probably the best night I've ever had storytelling.
And speaking of which, let's go ahead. Rob, are you ready?
Well,
Sure, if you like.
first I want to say that we've already been doing this for an hour and 35 minutes. It
Yes.
felt like less, just kind of blew by.
Yeah, it feels like maybe 15, 20 minutes we've been sitting down.
Yeah.
I know,
Sorry about
like
that.
15, 20 minutes I've been here.
Yeah, exactly. The whole show just been anything before Jeremy.
Smart ass. All right. I'm going to put Rob up, guys.
But
Oh,
first,
what-
you were James was asking about levity. Did we want to go that way and kind of change the direction a little bit, or
Please.
We can go whatever way you want to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
Whatever
I'm fully
you have
prepared
ready.
to do a little
If it's-
levity.
Okay,
Okay.
if you're prepared, as long as
Fine.
it's not one of those like, oh shit, I have to go grab something else and run around and do something. So
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Welcome to Mr. Rob Smales.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna see if I can get through 3 things. 2 of them are very quick. I guess technically they're poetry. I am not a poet. I am more a fan of Dr. Seuss. So a long time ago, I rewrote some fairy tales so that they suited me better. So I'm going to go through a couple of those, and then I actually have an actual campfire story to tell you. So the first thing I want to actually read is called Fit for a King. You recognize where I got these from. So it's sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the king began to scream, as 4 and 20 undead birds up from that pie did stream. The king was in his dining hall, a fighting for his life. The queen was in the parlor, a sharpening her knife. The witch was in the kitchen, her pocket full of rye, peeking in the dining room to see the king did die. And once the king was just a corpse, and risen birds dispersed, the queen did slit the witch's throat, so as not to fill her purse. So just a note to castle kings and wife-beating tough guys, beware of bats and burning beds and zombie blackbird pies. I think that's fun.
That was fun.
Where's the other one? The other one is a little bit longer, and I took more liberties with it. It's called Night of the Egg. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Rather than letting Humpty go to waste, they tucked in their napkins and all had a taste. They boiled him, scrambled him, poached him, and fried, even brought several plates to the horses outside. And though it might seem that they all were quite mean, all they felt was quite full as they licked their plates clean. And the parts that weren't eaten were buried out back, all the yolk-covered shell bits piled in a neat stack. So, full up with Humpty, they all went to sleep, not thinking that as they sowed, so would they reap. Never thinking that in the night Humpty would rise, a revenant that all living things did despise. As he moved through the night, for king's men he did look, intending to show them good Humpty could cook. And he found all the houses of all the king's men, and invited them down to the kitchen again. Johnson he boiled in a great iron pot, and as the man screamed, Humpty laughed quite a lot. Once the yelling died down, Humpty lifted him up, then he stuffed Johnson into a giant egg cup. Smithered he axed, then he scrambled the man, and he fit what he could in a well-buttered pan. In this horrible way, Humpty took Smithers' life, and, to make matters worse, left the mess for his wife. Poaching was how Barrington met his end, held under the water by our shell-covered friend. Once the simmering pan brought the king's man his fate, he finished the night on a nice salad plate. Only Richards was left, and you know how he died, kicking and screaming as his body was fried. Then Humpty visited the king's horses, too. For the next 18 months, there was plenty of glue. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men never were seen in the village again. Such a reading I have.
My favorite thing ever, by the way.
Okay. And now for the off the top of my head story, which doesn't have a title. It's a literal campfire story. So I find this kind of thing funny. Some people don't, and they might wonder why I do. And so it's, some people point to the way that I was raised, which goes back to my parents. And you might think that it's my father, since my mom used to like to tell a story of when they were first married, when she was pregnant with me. She woke up one night and he was gone. He wasn't in bed. And she waited a while thinking he had just gone to the bathroom, but he didn't come back. So she got up to kind of walk through the house and find out where he'd gone. And as she exited the bedroom and entered the kitchen, he leapt down upon her from atop the refrigerator, where he had cleared everything off, put it down on the counter, and climbed up there and just waited for her to wake up and realize he was gone, just so he could leap down and scare her. So you might think that genetically, the fact that he's my dad makes me this way, makes me like to scare people. But it's not. See, I told you that story so I could tell you this one. When I was about, I think, 6, which would put it around 1975, we went camping. My grandparents, my mom's parents, had a camp. It's in a little place called Shawtown in New Hampshire. And they used to go all the time. My grandparents went all the time. They had a camper, which I thought was the coolest thing ever because there weren't home computers or games or anything like that yet. We went with a tent, and we got the site next to them. And that was where we were going on vacation. And so 6-year-old me, my 4-year-old sister, my parents were kind of next door at my grandparents' site at their campfire the first night that we were there. Now, the way that Shawtown was set up is it's all dirt roads, and the main roads, they have streetlights. They also have little cartoon figures. It was Woody Woodpecker and there was Bugs Bunny, and they would point down the side roads where the actual sites were. So kids, you wouldn't have to read a street sign or anything. You just know that you went where Bugs Bunny was pointing and you would get to your site. We were down the Woody Woodpecker road. So we're down on the Woody Woodpecker road. We're gathered on my grandparents' campfire. Night falls. It's dark. I'm a city kid. I needed to, I don't know why my sister didn't go with me. I assume she was only 4, that she had already fallen asleep. But I needed to, get ready for bed. When it was time for me to go to bed, I was the only kid. I had to go get ready for bed. Which means I had to go up to the bathhouse in the lighted portion of the campground. Toothbrush, wash my face, and I could come back and go to bed. I decided I could go by myself. Not a big deal. I know where it is. It's one road. I know how to get back. Woody Woodpecker's pointing the way. We're good. But it's never having been outside the city that I can recall before I was 6. I didn't realize that the road was going to be fucking pitch black. It was going to be so dark, but it was okay because it's like a tunnel. And at the other end of the tunnel is the lighted road that takes me to the bathhouse. Great. Fine. I can walk down the road from the campsite. We're cool. I just keep my eyes on that lighted road. Not a problem. Put my little flip-flops on because I got to have shower shoes because I'm going to the bathhouse and my mother didn't want me to catch something and have my feet rot off. It was the 70s. People were worried. And so I, hiked out to the bathhouse. Everything was fine. Did my business, washed up, brushed my teeth. Everything's cool. I am a goddamn grown-up. I'm okay. I start heading back. I find Woody Woodpecker. He points down the road. I get to the end of the road. I'm looking down the road. The thing I didn't anticipate, because I was only 6, was that when you're in the lighted portion on the lighted road, looking down the pitch black, unlighted road, you can't see anything. It is scary as fuck. And I'm wearing stupid flip-flops that you can't run in. So I kind of leaned around a little bit, trying to change the angle so that maybe I could see the campfire through the trees, something that would tell me how far down that deep, dark throat of a road I had to go. Couldn't see anything. So toothbrush in one hand, I bent down, took my flip-flops off. And anyone who can run in flip-flops, I salute you. I can't even walk on the damn things. And I'm, as a grown-up, never mind when I was a kid. But toothbrush in one hand, flip-flops in the other hand, and I start hot-footing it down that road. I can't see a goddamn thing. All I'm trying to do is not run into a tree. Once I was on the road, my eyes started to adjust a little bit. And I could make out like some of the trees. I could tell that I was still on the road, which was good because I didn't want to run full tilt into a tree. And just as I realized that I can see the trees and I can see the road that I'm actually on, from around one of the trees, a shadow figure leans out and reaches for me with the longest arms in the world. And it says, "Rob." And the scream that came out of me was probably heard all through New England. And I ran faster. I have no memory of after the Rob actually getting to the campsite, but I blasted full tilt into my dad's chest. I'm hysterical. I'm screaming and crying. He wants to know what's going on. He wants to know what's wrong. My grandparents are gathered around. They want to know what's wrong. All I can tell them is that there's someone back there. There's a thing back there. There's someone, and it's after me. It's after me. And they all look back, and I turn around and look, and my mom comes walking out of the darkness into the camp, into the campfire light, horribly apologetic, and just she's so sorry. And she explained that she came out. I had been gone for a while apparently, because I took so long bucking up the courage to go down that dark road, that she came to fetch me. And she got about halfway down the road and she saw me standing there looking around. And she thought that me looking around, I saw her. And then I took my flip-flops off and I started to run down the friggin' road. And it wasn't until I was passing her that she realized, oh shit, he didn't see me. So she just leaned up to get my attention, never thinking that she was going to scar me for life by calling out my name and grabbing for me when I was running by in the dark road. So, okay, fine. I was 6. Kids are resilient. I got over it. My sister was crying while I was screaming and crying, but then for the rest of the trip, while we're out, would just come up to me and do Rob and just try to make me cry, because that's what siblings do. So I had that as a story in my head for why I was scarred for life, and this is why I'm. It has nothing to do with my dad jumping off of the fridge. And my mom maintained that story for about 25 years. So we're fast forwarding 25 years now. I'm a grown up. I'm an adult. My dad has his own business working as a contractor, and he hired my best friend. So my best friend was working for him when they had a little tiny company Christmas party. And my mom went to the Christmas party and she had a little bit to drink and she got a little bit like laughing. And I have no idea. I wasn't there, so I have no idea how the story came up. But apparently Paul asked about it and she finally fessed up and said, actually, no, she did come out to get me, to fetch me, but she saw me looking, knew that I couldn't see dick, couldn't see her at all. And then she stepped off the road behind a tree, waited for me to come by because she thought it would be funny to lean out and scare the living shit out of me. Success! Him being my best friend, he couldn't wait to come tell me that, oh no, mom scarred me for life on purpose. So when people ask like why I write the things that I write, why I think the things that I think are funny, my mom thought that was hysterical. So that apparently it just runs in my family. So that's all I got.
I feel like we had an unintentional
That was awesome.
like a completely undiscussed,
Nice.
unintentional theme of like different ways and reactions to like just jumping out and scaring someone for fun or for whatever. And like we had a lot of different reactions and ways that went in different situations. And here I am, the asshole that haunts for a living part time and gets paid for it. So now I feel a lot worse about myself and moving on. Joking.
The family that scares
I'm going
together
through
stays together.
There you go.
Works for me.
They scare together, they care together.
Yes.
I'm just scrolling through real quick. Dude, my mom did the same shit to me though. We had a discussion very early on.
Everybody thinks it's the dads. It's not.
No.
It's the fucking moms.
Okay. When we first started the Owl Light, we had this discussion with the first couple of people that we had come on with us. Well, the first couple of episodes that we had. And we discovered that for most of us, it was really, oh, wait, I'm not moving everybody around again. We're just stuck where we are now. So,
We're there.
I
Jeremy,
had some technical issues.
But it was the grandmas for most of us that really scared the shit out of us first. And then it would move on and like the moms would become involved. But it was all the grandmas that started off with the storytelling techniques and the just like, I'm going to make those kids piss themselves is what the grandmas did to us all.
Yeah, like big time. And I'll give you the quick, like super quick version of mine. My grandma was the professional storyteller in our family, which is why I am the way I am entirely. It's my grandma's fault.
Okay, it is driving me nuts. Let me do it.
And she did this whole thing where she would tell these giant grand stories. But the first ever time I was camping as a kid, I was like 5 or 6, and she tells us this crazy story. All day she's out by the fire cutting stuff out of newspaper. Grandma, what are you doing? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, whatever. We ignored it. Went and played. Came back. She tells us this fucked up story about these kids that looked just like us. That had a tent, looked just like ours, in a night just like this, and the kids were murdered, the parents were murdered. She's telling us the story in the tent, and their bodies were never found until tonight. And she shines the flashlight on, and there are bodies draped over the tent. We run out screaming, only to find out that all day long she's been cutting the shape of human bodies out of newspaper to stash on top of the tent to set up the story for later.
My grandma. Sometime I'll read it again. It's a family poem. All of us kids when we were little, it's like a rite of passage in the family. You learn orally Little Orphan Annie by James Whitcomb Riley. It's the goblins will get you if you don't watch out poem. And if you don't know that, you'll learn it at some point in time, because I'll say it again. I read it at her celebration of life, but
and also watch The Labyrinth.
But my mother did something similar. All us kids were out playing outside one time, and my mom's like 5'2". Well, now she's like 5 foot, but she made it to like 5'2" when she was getting grown. And we had our stepdad, and we were all just starting to get together as a family, and we were all playing. And she dressed up in like this big overall thing and these huge boots of his and this hood, and everything was covering. We were playing hide and seek, and she stepped up behind the side of the back of the house and started moaning and just making horrible noises. And my stepbrother runs out. We were trying to play hide and seek, but he's like, no, you guys come here. You got to listen. And he drags us out, and we're all standing, and there's just these horrible sounds coming. And then Mom jumps out in this outfit. And my sister, who is the littlest, probably like 4 at the time, made it into the house in under 2 seconds, like running around, going up the stairs, getting through the door and in. My stepsister's right behind her. My stepbrother's kind of like, oh yeah, that was it, I told you, and ran. And I just went, oh, and fell right on my ass. So I was like, I'm the dead one in every horror film. I'm going to automatically just faint or something.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
But my own grandmother, mostly it was my Uncle John, who was only 10 years older than I was. He would do things like, he would tell me that we would be like down in the basement, and he would tell me things like, if any spider, no matter what it is, how small it is or big it is, if it bites you, you'll be dead within half an hour, and then push me into a spider web. Then he'd had me going like the Mount Rushmore was the result of wind and rain erosion. But And that one time when I was 5, when Christmas here at Grandma and Grandpa's place, he went out behind a barn, shot off a shotgun, came back and told me and my sister that Santa Claus just committed suicide. So no Christmas this year.
Oh my God.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Right.
And so Shannon, by the way, is from North Platte originally. My aunt is our family spooky storyteller, and definitely around the real campfire in the dark of the ranch in western Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'll be keeping you company. And yeah, well, you're from Nebraska. You know how we act. We're horrible people here.
Yeah. But my grandmother.
When you live in a state where you can be mugged by the wind, I mean, I would be horrible too.
Yeah.
I'm
Nebraska, we have weather.
My grandmother, I'm told, when I was a baby, she would do this trick where she would push her dentures out with her tongue together, and then clack them together, and that would just freak me out. But
I have dentures and I do that to people. I'm not gonna lie.
Grandma could shoot them out at us, and she would do it at the end of Little Orphan Annie. It's like, the goblins look at you, don't watch out. Yeah, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Nice.
I go to bed after seeing your teeth.
I sometimes like put my teeth in my hand like a puppet and wrap a scarf around it and like pretend to be an old lady.
But my mother, my mother, she was the one who inadvertently turned me on to like the dark side of storytelling, because she tried to keep me away from getting traumatized by some things like horror movies, but she would let me watch Disney, and she would also always wonder why was my favorite part of Fantasia the Night on Bald Mountain segment, or I would root for Maximilian when watching The Black Hole or something. Let's not forget the 80s were dark for Disney. So
my grandparents had a cabin. It wasn't really a cabin. It was more like a trailer set up as a cabin. They then built like a whole extra section to it and stuff, set up by the Missouri River. And they had beds enough for all of us in there, and like we'd all cram onto them or whatever. But I remember I watched, was it Night of the Scarecrow, I believe was the name of it, where the guy like is like framed for stuff and people come, and then he like gets into the body of I watched that with my grandma and stuff. And it's the same day as when I learned the Big Rock Candy Mountain. So we got
not to be confused with Candy Mountain, the place where Charlie goes to lose his vital organs.
We got a story here from East Coast Hunters. My dad told us a story when he was 8. Went around town. They lived in collecting papers to get clippings to get a free lantern. And when he got it in the mail, he talked his dad into letting him go to his grandparents after dark. And he told Grandpa to go hide and scare him. Dad started laughing, and he said they didn't know he had a pocket full of rocks. And he knocked out one of his tooths and blacked Grandpa's eye. He loved to tell that story.
That's epic, dude.
Nice.
Nice.
My uncle, storyteller's next youngest brother, used to remove his thumb for us little kids. We were all just mesmerized.
Yes.
Horror.
And those
my uncle tried. He didn't do it right.
Like storytelling things that we see that we believe are real. And I wanted to get back to Robert's story for just a moment, like especially the first two. By the way, this totally tore me up. Like I was laughing so hard, I was in tears. And I think some Mountain Dew came out of my nose at some point during the Humpty Dumpty story. It was
burns, doesn't it?
Oh my God, that was beautiful.
But the story reminds me, like those moments, our overactive imagination, like as children, when even the parts of your story where nothing had actually happened at all, but you had it so built up in your head, and that memory of having it built up and what it meant to you when you were a kid and how intense it was. Then, of course, something did happen. It just wasn't the terrible thing you thought was happening, but. That's what it's like. That's like a window into childhood, and for every kid has that experience somewhere. And like the way you told that just totally brought me back to being in campgrounds as a kid. My brother and my sister dipping out on me, just leaving me somewhere in the dark, and having to get back to the campsite was always the hard part.
By the way, I don't know how you even walk in flip flops, because I had a nice pair of flip flops for an outfit. For a family graduation, we had to go up an escalator, and I nearly died. I mean, that's how bad it was.
Inside shoe.
Mm-hmm. I have.
You wear shoes inside?
I do. Just flip flops, and I wear them with socks. So that's everybody.
Same. Yeah. I do that too, and my flip flops have like memory foam in them too, so they're comfortable.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. I blew out a flip flop, stepped on a pop top.
But you can't run in them. Like it's impossible.
No.
I try to every now and again like run away from my dog, and like I get like 3 steps, one of them flies off. I'm like, all right, fuck that.
See, for me, I'm fat and I only have 1 speed anyway, so those shoes are perfect for me.
Yeah,
See, I'm a stoner, so I have 1 speed as well.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a whole other.
I got to tell you something, you guys. It's just the other night I woke up around 3 in the morning, just chilly in the air and everything. I looked at the foot of the bed and I saw the ghost of Wilford Brimley looking at me, just going, "Diabetes, beatus, 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 beatus." So what I did, I got up, I tried to run away. He kept following me around, going, "Beatus, beatus, 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 beatus." So I had to grab like the cylinder of the Quaker Oats thing out of the cabinet and just started throwing him at him like holy water. And he just evaporated, leaving only the fresh scent of oatmeal.
And then suddenly, out of nowhere, from a dark corner of the room, Billy Mays here.
Oh my god!
Yeah, that's the sort. I thought about that like last night before falling asleep. That's the kind of stuff that I need to jot down.
Let me just say, I enjoyed that story.
Well, now it's on. Yeah, you can just pull it up and you got it. Suddenly, I have to bring it up because I had to look it up, and because I had to do so, you all have to share it because that is part of my mental trauma for everyone else to cope with. When you were talking about running in flip flops, it made me think of that. Did you ever read the Boondocks comic or watch the Boondocks show?
Yeah.
There's
Some.
Okay, there's this episode where the granddad is dating a prostitute, and they're like, "She's out," and it's like,
it's a pimp named.
What do you think? Like,
you got to say the whole thing.
Does she hide under the tables when somebody dressed in all purple comes into the room? Can she run real fast in high heels? Then she's out.
At first, when you were
one of my favorite episodes.
For some reason, when James was
the prayer,
story, all I heard was the name Grimley, and that was not the Grimley I was thinking of. That was about.
I was thinking of Ed
I
Grimley.
must say,
strutting.
I had that lunchbox as a kid. It was a lunchbox with his goldfish in the fucking goldfish tank, and it was like it was my hair for a while.
Okay, so we've been on now for 2 hours.
Lies.
Wow.
Lies. I do. Jeremy, we kind of contacted really late about this, so he is excused from telling a story unless he suddenly came up with one.
Bullshit.
So if you have something, you're welcome. If not, you were notified. Like obviously,
Wait.
you joined in halfway through.
Tag, you're it.
I'm good for tonight. I as I said, I just wanted to come to hang. You know,
Yeah.
I like
hanging's good.
Some human contact.
I do have a story. It might be kind of long, but it depends on if you count how long most people or how quickly most people read things. As we talked with Rob with before, it's like, yeah, so people are like, oh, this should take 20 minutes to read, and I get it done in 5 or something like that. So I do have something you guys want, and this will be the break from traditional campfire stories. If we want to do it tonight, if not, we can do it another night. So,
I mean,
how are you guys doing on time? Do you have time to hang out?
I came to party.
Yeah.
Woo!
I came to kick ass and chew bubble gum.
Let's do this.
I'm all out of bubble gum.
All right, Raz, do you know how to? Do it. Okay, I'll do it. You want to throw me up and put up everything and do the muting?
Blur.
All right. This story actually, I'm gonna do. This is totally a shameless plug. Raz and I were in Nightmare Whispers, which was a trilogy from Fake Horror. What Remains was the name of this particular book, and this is my story called The Intruder. And here's where we're gonna go. As it has become a bit of a thing in pop culture over recent years, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the method of loci, also known as the Mind Palace mnemonic memory technique. For those of you unfamiliar with it, it is relatively simple to understand the basics. The user visualizes a place with landmarks or objects that they are able to attach specific memories or ideas to in order to go back, wander through the palace, and call upon the memories. This is its basic form. More advanced techniques include creating a person's own new place to store different types of information. Hence, someone may create a house or a palace and assign different sections to different categories of a thought. Perhaps a library wherein different books store the memories of scholastic knowledge, a living room designed with pictures and knickknacks to remember family and events shared with them, etc. I have constructed one of these, and somehow someone has managed to break into it. I would like to start by explaining my particular construction, and as I get caught up, I shall begin chronicling things as they happen, my efforts to try and find this intruder in my mind and to rid myself of them. I take medication for a couple of issues. Note, I'm not suffering from schizophrenia or any other mental conditions that causes hallucinations, and as a side effect, I encounter often is a bit of memory impairment. It's not generally too bad, but it's bad enough to cause me annoyance, and I've tried many things to help me keep my mind sharp. I do puzzles and such to try to keep up my mental strength. I first came across the Mind Palace technique in Little Big by John Crawley. As I often dream of houses, specific houses that exist only in my dreams, I eventually decided to give it a whirl. I had nothing to lose, and it could be fun. The way it was described in Little Big, not only would I have improvements in my memory, but I could also possibly get a chance to see my subconscious alter things as I learned more about them. Being able to wander through my own head and pick up on things that were going on in my subconscious mind seemed like it would be an added benefit at the time. I started small, and to help myself, I would grab pictures from the internet of designs I felt comfortable with to help me envision my palace. I initially had a foyer with a large, comfortable sofa in front of a fireplace, flanked by bookcases that had a few pictures on the mantel and a painting above it. I would sit on the sofa and embed the thoughts or memories into one of the items in the room. Eventually, I had to branch out, though. Too little space for 40 years worth of memories. Twin staircases swept up behind the sitting area and to the second floor, appeared off to the sides, and a blurred darkness weighted my placement of doors into the wings. On the second floor, I first made a gallery off to the left that I thought of as high school. It was a long portrait gallery that had pictures of the people that I knew from high school, as well as some separate events. The more detail I had of these events, the more elaborate the area of the portrait took. Some became little nooks with extra memorabilia associated with the person set up on small stands. Others opened into their own rooms. An example. My high school guidance counselor, Mr. Donahue. Mr. Donahue favored brown and orange sweaters and sweater vests, and his office was decorated with orange, brown, and yellow. He told terrible jokes and tossed out brain teasers by the dozen. I babysat for his son a couple of times and gifted him with a Nintendo game that we both enjoyed when we discovered that the screen to his television showed parts of the scenery that mine didn't, allowing him to access parts that I couldn't. Mr. Donahue had a nook now, with a small picture of a sailboat, Zeno's paradox with a man crossing a lake on a boat used as an example, a screen door, don't lean on screen doors, you might fall and strain yourself, and a Nintendo cartridge on yellow, brown, and orange stands. After over a year of work, I had a library assigned to individual scholastic subjects, and the books were moved from their shelves in the foyer to their new respective homes, with empty tomes taking their place to be filled later. Various other galleries represented different times in my life or concepts such as music. Due to the rooms that would grow from the portraits, any blueprints would have defied mathematics and fallen strictly in the realm of Escher. But it worked in my head, and that was the important part. The blurry darkness on the ground floor gave way to hallways leading to rooms dedicated to close friends and family. The wings and stories of the palace grew like Stephen King's Rose Red. Seemingly little rhyme or reason behind their specifics, they were just built where they felt they needed to be. I would enter my palace at night before bed, settle into my sofa, and start organizing the new information of the day. Embedding new information into one of the blank books on the shelves will result with it promptly placing itself in the correct library when I was finished. Thoughts on people traveled into their respective rooms or nooks throughout the palace, and newly met people would have their portrait hung in the proper gallery. The organization was easy by this time for the most part. What fascinated me was when I would take the time to walk around from room to room. Spending a particularly long time before a painting would bring up more memories that I had stored away and add to the detail or enhance its status to a nook or a room. Linked ideas could take me from one place to another at the speed of thought. Mr. Lawton's humanities class, where we were first introduced to the Cyrillic alphabet and the difference between translation and transliteration. The back of the clan book Malkavian, which had written in Cyrillic transliteration, "If you can read this, you are officially tragically hip." My Armenian friend being so excited when I asked him to give me a transliterated version of the song Gna, remembering him teaching me that Gna meant go, while Ari meant come here. Playing my current MMO, or one of my friends and guildmates had all of her tunes with variations of the name Ari in them. Stopping myself from having such out of control tangents in my thinking was one of the things I was trying to use this for, though it could be a good way to put myself to sleep at times. Another thing I discovered when taking extended walks, particularly after spending a good deal of time on Facebook, was that the portraits would begin to alter slightly. It was like watching Dorian Gray at times. Based on the content they posted, they might not acquire the depth of a nook, but they would become more ugly or beautiful caricatures of themselves based upon the types of posts they had made. If it was people I was close to, their rooms might start altering as well. A friend that I might have had a bottle of alcohol in the room for, remembering a time we had at a party might end up with a cracked, empty bottle if they were acting out as a bitter alcoholic, and so forth. Forgive me for delving so deeply into my own personal creation. It's important, though, for you to understand how my mind works in order to grasp my current problems. There are only a few more things to go through before I can explain my current trouble. As I began to spend more time nightly in my mind palace to relax and unwind, I started thinking of other possibilities for it. About 8 months ago is when the basement was created. I'm the type of person who tends to bottle things up. I needed a way to vent, a place to punch a pillow, as it were. Within the confines of my own mind, I decided that it was allowable to go a bit further and create a room where I could create a more satisfying punching bag and methods of taking out my frustrations. I made a room where I would materialize faceless constructs to kick around when the week had me at its wit's end. Also in the basement, I added a bedroom where I could then go, relax, meditate, and access my palace. The pillow punching room seemed to evolve as I discovered the therapeutic value of it. It didn't advance to the status of a torture chamber, but I will admit that a few choice weapons hung on the walls, and the mannequins, though never crossing the line into developing faces, were quite human in how they handled the punishments dealt with them. Though this was a bit worrisome, I didn't use these weapons, nor did I devolve into spending hours a day attacking things in my mind. It was just there for when I needed it. Indeed, I spent more time in the bedroom than any other room, daydreaming and sifting through my thoughts through the windows I had hanging on the walls that led to the various other rooms of my mind. This would have relaxed me and eventually helped me to sleep. Now that you have suffered through my construction, I will introduce you to what is causing my current dilemma. About 2 weeks ago, I entered my mind's basement for a visit to the pillow punching room. After a particularly brutal session that I'm ashamed to say was set off by a combination of political posts on Facebook, petty trolling in the game that I play, and general irritability, I left to go curl up in my bedroom to relax when I saw a new door. One that I had never put up. There were only 2 doors in the basement, both on the same wall, and this one was in the corner of the hallway. I immediately felt ill at ease with this door, as even though I was aware of my palace being able to evolve on its own, it mainly kept to the same architectural style, which was somewhat Victorian steampunk, as well as being close to the same room or hallway that the new object would belong with. This door was in my basement, where I kept only means of meditation and working out my frustrations, not memories. It was also quite an eyesore. Set in the polished oak walls, this door was unfinished, battered wood. It was something that may have been attached to a long ago abandoned cabin. There was no knob, simply a handle, and it hung poorly in the doorframe, gaps in the wood allowing the interior to be viewed from the outside. I approached it cautiously and decided that rather than opening it, I would look through the openings between the boards. When I did so, I was overcome with a feeling of vertigo. The room wasn't up high, nor complexly laid out. It simply did not look or feel like anything else in my mind. I couldn't see it properly, as if looking through the door gave the effect of wearing a drastically wrong prescription of glasses. Frightened and confused, I decided to leave the door after setting up a second wrought iron barred door in front of it and locking it. That evening, I spent in my mind's bedroom meditating on all of the new information I had recently added and cross-referencing by letting myself fly around through the tangents, searching for any reasons why this new addition would have been made. I could come up with nothing. Eventually, I left my palace out of frustration and slept somewhat troubled for the night. I dreamt of doors and shadows, the feeling of an unknown watcher following me through strange hallways I'd never visited, and that horrible vertiginous feeling came over me whenever I tried to focus on anything. The next day, I had decided to find out what this new addition represented, as it was causing me more distress than any other change had caused me before. I wanted to approach it as calmly as I could, so I had a long bubble bath, a cup of chamomile tea, and I lay down on my bed with a lavender eye pillow to keep the afternoon light out as I let myself into my mind palace. Settling first in the foyer, I searched again for anything new that may not have been properly categorized away. Nothing was evident. I wandered the second floor galleries and rooms looking for other changes that I may not have noticed for lack of visiting. Again, nothing. Paying very close attention, I scoured the first floor rooms of my family and close friends, once again coming up frustrated and empty-handed. The only comfort being that none of the other rooms had been invaded by the same nauseating perspective as the new room provided to me. Finally, I went down to the basement to encounter this new extension of my mind. To my relief, the door I put up in front of it was still locked and nothing appeared to have changed. Opening the door I had created, I rested my hand on the handle and noticed that the wood felt odd. Similar to the view, it seemed to be causing my sense of touch to be invaded by something alien to the way things worked in my mind palace. I'd expected that. It was similar to grabbing a cup and expecting iced tea only to have a mouthful of diet soda, if that's a possible way to describe touch. Trying to explain sensation in one's own mind is difficult. Breathing slowly until I was calm, I braced myself for what other assaults of my senses I may be encountering and slowly pulled the door open towards myself. My visual perception still off and trying to see exactly what was before me, I stood on the threshold trying to acclimate to it as best as I could. It seemed a plain room, concrete floor and walls, perhaps about 20 by 20 feet. There were shelves mounted to the walls with what appeared to be small knickknacks, as well as a few end tables with small items on them, also placed in a seemingly random fashion. As I acclimated to the visual distortion, I took careful, shaky steps towards the first table and found that as I got closer to it, I could see the details better. It was nothing grand, a plant stand about 8 inches across with a half-empty Mountain Dew bottle, a CoverGirl compact, and a hair tie sitting upon it. I had no memories attached to these items. I was loath to touch anything in there, as the sensation of the door had been disturbing enough. Venturing to the next table, I discovered a dog-eared copy of The Tropic of Cancer, an open half of a pack of Camel Wides, a black Zippo lighter, and a folded piece of paper that looked to have something drawn within the folded sections I could not see. I checked a few more of the tables, and all had these random items on them that stirred up no memories or attachments to me at all. As I got further into the room, I could make out that there appeared to be a large overstuffed chair there, with some more tables and perhaps boxes around it. I was feeling more and more ill at ease in this room and decided to leave. I made it back out and shut the door behind me. I was again disorientated as I stepped back into the hallway. After regaining my equilibrium, I closed and locked my additional door again and made my way back out of my mind palace to process what I had learned. I did this analyzing outside of the palace so as not to add to the items inadvertently into my own storage. It appeared that whatever was in this room affected my senses of touch and sight. I hadn't noticed any sounds except my own quiet steps and breathing, which appeared to be normal, and there had been no smells nor tastes that I had encountered. Nothing was mine in this room. I could not connect it in any way to myself. Though I was familiar with the book, had smoked Camel Wides at one time, and recognized the other items, they simply existed there, unlike items specifically placed in my palace with a memory or idea implanted in them. I could not come up with any reason that this door and room should have appeared, much less why it was so foreign of an experience to me. After hours theorizing, I could only come up with 3 explanations. First was that somehow my mind has created this room for some reason I have yet to discover. The second and third are kind of combined. Somehow, either I have encroached upon someone else's memory palace, or that they have done the same to mine. It would explain why I had the altered perceptions if they see things differently than I do, and their nerve endings wouldn't be the same as mine. As whatever significance the objects would hold to them would be set by them, it would explain why I could feel no attachment. But how could it be that our minds have been intersected in this fashion? As I was rather frightened after this experience, I resolved to stay out of my mind palace for a bit. Perhaps it would fix itself and go away, or evolve into something that I could understand if I let my subconscious do its job. More dreams of doors and being watched followed, but they were to be expected. Now to the most pressing concern. Last night, I entered again after giving my mind a week to organize itself. Using the same routines as I had the last time, I went through the foyer, second floor, and the main floor, finding no changes. I then went down to the basement. No changes in my rooms there either, but the door was still there. Hoping something had changed about it, I went to investigate. There was definitely a change, but it wasn't what I had hoped. Peering through the cracks, I could tell that the room seemed the same. The distortion remained as well. The door I'd created in front of it was still locked, thank the gods, but small slivers of wood littered the floor at my feet, and the door had chips out of it where it appeared to have been slammed against the bars of my door. I had documented all of the items that I had seen in there the time I had stepped through on a notebook. I did not want to duplicate them to begin appearing in my palace itself. How odd it would be to have a nook based on a room that was built without my input. I did not want to start thinking of the paradoxes that could cause. I decided to enter the room once again to see if it had noticeably changed, if it was still as eerie as it had been, so alien to me. This time, the wood felt the same, but in a way I remembered, still foreign, but a previously encountered sensation that wasn't as bad as the first time. The room made me nauseated with the difference in perceptions. I saw the items I had seen before, and I could smell something now. It smelled of cheap whiskey and burnt cigarettes. I approached the chair and saw a nearby empty bottle on the floor beside an overflowing ashtray. The chair seemed to have indentations where someone had spent a good deal of time sitting in it. Cigarette butts littered the floors. The room stretched further on this time, or I hadn't seen it properly the first time, I'm not sure which. The farther walls had a sheen of heat over a desert highway. The distance could be a mirage of sorts. I was again disturbed and left without touching anything, firmly locking my door over it. The worst part of this was that nothing seemed to fit into any pattern I could discern. If someone else had indeed been trying to enter my mind, as evidenced by the chipped door slamming against my wrought iron protection, how did they get there? Did they know that they were intruding upon my mind space? Or had the door shown up for them as well, out of nowhere? And were they trying to figure it out as well? What would happen if they appeared while I was in here? Or had they been in here when I entered? I was scared. I was angry. Who was my intruder? Why were they disturbing my peace? Why had they shown up in this most private and emotional level of my palace? I entered my pillow punching room in a whirlwind of emotions and went to the weapon wall. I needed to release my frustrations, and faceless victims were perfect for this. I plucked an aluminum bat and rounded into the center of the room, where I began attacking the supplied victim in earnest. Though it had no mouth, it still made noises, whimpers, and grunts of pain, sharp exultations if I hit it in the chest. I was raging over this creation, imagining it to be the invader. I beat it whilst its bones cracked, crushed its kneecaps, had it cowering on the ground below me as I raised the bat to cave in its head, and I had to stop myself in disgust. I had vented out my rage on a mental construct with more violence than I had ever used before. I threw the bat aside, and the room returned to its normal state. Thought of going into my bedroom to ruminate over things felt tainted for me, so I brought myself up for my meditations and decided that a melatonin would probably be a good thing for me to let my subconscious once again process things for itself. Perhaps it would see what I was missing. That was last night. My dreams were again of doors, shadowy figures slipping around corners, an overpowering sense of tobacco and liquor. There were a few faces that flickered by, but none that I could recognize. So quickly they raced across my mind. I found myself unsure of what I should do next. I made notes of the things that I had seen and smelled in the room, as well as its potential change of dimensions. Again, there is nothing in that room that is unfamiliar to me in general, but there is nothing there that I had put into my mind. When I walk through my rooms, objects resonate with tendrils of memory reaching out towards me. And they're also obscure. Nothing standing out. If they resonate with anything, it is unease. I believe that I should attempt to touch one of the objects, to see if doing so creates any new sense of what they are. I hadn't wanted to before, as having something touch my thoughts seemed obscene, but this room refused to leave, and it was causing me much distress. I know how I must sound, speaking of this as though it were an actual physical place, fighting with figments of my imagination, fearing for my control over my mind in case something could manage to break into an imaginary palace. It all sounds absurd. But I spent so long in this, perhaps too much time devoted to its construction, and I use it so often. To me, it is as real as any other place in the world, perhaps more so in some cases. It is an extension of me. It has some kind of cancer growing in it that I need to rid myself of. The balance changes itself as things in my life change, but always in ways that are understandable, subtle. I must recheck everything again, note any changes that have taken place, and make sure that there are no more secret doors hiding in the back of a hallway or a nook. After I have lunch today, I will prepare myself for a complete inventory again of my mind palace, and then I shall notify you of my results. I've returned. I am more frightened now than I can remember being in my life. I now know who the intruder is, as well as why and how they will make their way into my palace, and I am terrified that it could happen again. I shall explain, but forgive me if my explanation is less than completely coherent. You'll understand my terror before I'm finished. I again began with a cursory check through all the rooms and galleries that I had previously established, and again found nothing amiss. I braced myself and descended into the basement. When I came across the door, the evidence of whoever or whatever was behind it trying to break through was more pronounced. The handle had been broken from the door, and larger chunks of wood were on the floor from its assault upon the wrought iron bars caging it. There were scratches upon the wrought iron as well, as though someone had been clawing at it, trying to force it open from behind the wreck of what was left of the wooden door. I peered through one of the large openings and saw that the room was still in its foreign state, though it looked different than it had the last time I was there. I opened the outer door of the room, and then the wooden one, firm in my resolve to do whatever I must to solve the mystery of this place. Entering the room, it appeared as though its creator had thrown a fit. The shelves had fallen from the walls, the small tables were knocked to the floor with the items they had been displaying strewn about the place. The scent of whiskey and cigarettes was still prominent, while a top note of gasoline rounded off the olfactory assault. I jumped as I heard whimpers and turned to find out who was in the room with me. But there was no one. It appeared as though sound had finally been added as well. Whimpers, a slight scraping, and the creak of wood from above now joined the rest of the cacophony of this siege within my mind. I nearly bolted from the room. Panic began to set in, and I swallowed back the sour taste of bile as I closed my eyes and tried to breathe my way into a more collected state. After a few minutes, I was together as I was going to get. I approached some of the debris on the floor with the intent of picking it up and seeing what would happen. The first thing I found was the book. Fumbling a bit due to the foreignness of the sensation, I knelt on the floor and plucked it from its place. As soon as I made contact with it, a face flashed in my mind. This was Jeremy's book. I remembered him leading discussions about it to anyone who would listen when we were all out together. That had been nearly 20 years ago. It was a hazy part of my past that I always blamed the liquor for losing track of. Jeremy, Andy, Joanna, Leslie, and the rest of that crowd. We were a group at one point, spending most of our time together, drinking coffee or booze and playing at being intellectuals. I couldn't remember why we stopped spending time together. I assumed it was one of those things where people just drift apart. I'd gotten a new job and my schedule changed, life changed. But why was that book in here? Why did it make me remember? I threw it back on the floor, unsure of whether that was an actual memory or if it was just simply my association with the book, enhanced by all of the witchery taking place in this room. I looked for something else. The piece of folded paper laying just there past the book. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was a missing persons flyer. It was of Dana. I'd forgotten about her as well, nearly entirely. I'd never cared for her. She was Jeremy's girlfriend for a time, but we hadn't gotten along. Glancing around, I noticed the hair tie lying a few feet away was the same one she was wearing in the picture. She had never been found. I remembered that she was one of a number of girls who went missing that year. None of them were ever found. That was probably another thing that had been a part of breaking up our little group. No one knew how to act about it. It was beginning to feel as though this was the purpose behind this room. I had no idea who would be trying to force that year into the forefront of my mind, But the possibility that it was the person behind the missing girls was a troubling one. How had they found me? More importantly, why? The only one I had known was Dana, and as I said, we were never close. I put the flyer down and walked over to the chair. A pack of Camel Whites lay on the ground near the lighter thrown from their previous perch. I decided it was now or never. When I picked up the lighter, I got a flash of another face, Stefan. It nearly sent me reeling. Stefan had always been odd. He wasn't so much a part of our group as he was on the periphery. Present, but not really included in our activities unless we were out at a bar. He wasn't generally invited to gatherings at people's homes. I had no idea what had happened to him as we all drifted apart. The lighter was something he used to play with, a nervous habit of his, the tricks he tried to master. I picked up the pack of camels as well. I got a flash of Stefan again. This time, it came with an old house. It was abandoned, decently far out in the woods. I remember him taking me there once, when we'd all been a bit drunk. I think it was the only time I'd been alone with him. Want to see something cool? Everyone else was calling it a night, but I was in no hurry to get home, so I'd gone with him. The place was a wreck, but he'd set up one of the rooms with a small gasoline generator and had a radio and a lamp with a couple of chairs and a stash of booze and books. It looked like he spent a decent amount of time here. He tried to come on to me, and I ended up telling him off and leaving. It was a long walk back, and I had to give in and let him drive. It was the last time I spoke to him, I think. I didn't tell anyone else about it, just kept him at arm's length after that. Was it Stefan? Had he figured out a way to insinuate himself into my life again? Why would he do that after all of these years? My mind wandered, and I shook out a cigarette and lit it, force of habit, even my mind, I guess, or wherever I was. The connections I had to these objects was no longer something I doubted, but it was still a foreign feeling. They weren't as deep as those that I had placed in the rooms and nooks and galleries and the higher floors myself. They were uncomfortable, jarring, and fleeting. They didn't fill my mind, rather they teased bits of the past up and left me wondering why they were here. Taking a drag off of the Camel Wide, I was hit with another flash memory. Jeremy sobbing in his backyard over Dana. They hadn't parted on good terms, and he had been wrecked when she went missing. I'd always had a bit of a thing for Jeremy, but it wasn't reciprocated, so I left it alone. This is part of why I disliked her so much, I think. She never deserved him, and then after she left him, she disappeared and he never got closure. Looking at the chair, I realized it was one of the chairs that Stefan had had in that house. It kept coming back to him, once my mind had made the connection. Leary, that's what I'd nicknamed him to myself. Stefan Lear, always a bit strange. And after that incident in the abandoned house, someone I kept my distance from. I sat in the chair then, and almost without thinking, it was again overwhelmed with flashes of memory. Seeing Jeremy so bereft in his backyard, remembering the trip to the house with Stefan, the looks that Stefan gave Dana following her breakup with Jeremy, how he hadn't been around as much after the girls started disappearing, getting a bat, driving out to the forest, and hiding my car after seeing his truck. The long walk, trying not to get lost, hoping that I was wrong, hoping that I was right and could save them. No lights on in the house. Hearing something, though, sneaking in the back door. The creaking of the floor, the sound of voices, trying to find them. The pounding of footsteps up the stairs, the struggle, shoving him down the stairs, following him down and seeing the room, seeing the girls, what remained of them. Hitting him with that bat over and over and over until he wasn't making any noise anymore. Where was the screaming coming from? Looking up and seeing that Dana, in her chains, was still alive. Stefan no longer had a face. I was covered in blood and pieces of Stefan. Dana was screaming. Dana was alive. I came to bring her back, but then she'd ruin him again. Dana was cowering beneath me, beaten and starved, and I brought the bat down on her head until she no longer had a face. I took Stefan's keys from his pocket. I cleaned myself as best I could with the pump outside the house. I drove his truck further into the woods and left it. I went home and burned my clothes and donated the bat to Goodwill. I got a new job and got away from my friends. They never found the girls. They never found Stefan. And somehow, I managed to forget it all. I finished the Camel Wide and ground it out on the floor with the others. I went to my pillow punching room and took the bat and threw it into the horrible growth and sealed the door over with bricks and then paneling to hide it from my sight. I came out of my meditations so that I could tell you what I found. I am the intruder that broke into my mind. I am the cancer that caused my own distress. I'm the alien presence of the past, shoved behind walls that managed to break itself free. And now I am terrified of what else might be lurking in the shadows, just past the edge of thought, building itself into my awareness. And that would be my story for the night. And I didn't actually go as long as I thought it was.
That's actually one of my absolute favorites of yours. You know that. I got to read that when it was in its early stages. I got to be in that book with you. Like that's the mind pause. That's something that we talk about a lot in general, of like how we store our memories.
Yeah. It was chilling back then when I read it, and it's chilling now.
Yeah.
I feel silly doing this, but I'm going to thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree. Damn.
But and Jeremy, you weren't the Jeremy that was written about in the book, by the way.
I kind of figured that.
That was a couple years before she met you.
I mean, I have a bad memory, but it's not that bad.
Based on
entire lifetimes.
Based on a true story.
Well, the thing is that as far as the memory tells, a lot of that actually, outside of the killing and shit, I do that.
Allegedly.
That is on my mind. James, who I went to school with, knows exactly who I'm talking about with a couple of the different nooks that I created.
Yeah.
Real people, real places, and the pillow punching room. I was actually told by where I use like the bats and hurt people. It's gotten more violent, but that was because I actually was told that was healthy by a therapist that I was seeing, to use that type of a device to attack things. So yeah, a lot of that. I mean, not
your therapist told you to take a bat and attack people.
Yes, and Glenn Danzig, because this is stupid, but it's real. Like I said, things will change as you've built them. But Glenn Danzig joined my mind palace in just in that room. And so when I walk in and I'm having a particularly bad night and I decide that I need to beat up gelatin figurines and do stuff, he like cheers me on. And he's a little guy. He's shorter than I am. I've met him in person, so I know this. And he's older, so he's got to be shrinking a bit. So yeah, so that part
This
is all real.
This is a man that was once casted to play Wolverine many, many years ago, and then he did that Entombed album where he dressed up as Wolverine on the cover, and then ultimately turned it down because he didn't want to be typecasted and never did a film.
That's a shame because he's the right height for Wolverine, which I try to explain to my mother, and she's like, "But Wolverine is tall," and I'm like, "Well, no, Hugh Jackman is tall.
Yeah,
Wolverine is not."
Yes, but what do we all think of his films, though?
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, it was in the movie. I like.
Yeah, he made a couple of movies.
I'm a fan.
I mean, out of nowhere, Dell just revealed her celebrity crush during that story. I was very taken aback by that.
What?
Have you not read your title recently?
She has not.
Oh God, damn it, Raz!
There was a different one that said Raz was here for a minute, and then I switched to that. Changing it immediately.
Well, you want to come on to an episode of Uncaged with me then?
Yeah, no.
Ooh, Uncaged. That sounds fun.
It's a series I do on my other podcast. So
all about Nicolas Cage.
Yep, we watch Nicolas Cage and discuss it. Me and my friend Brian.
And
last one
I do not go on
discuss. So.
You had some good things to say about Renfield.
Yeah,
I did.
Fantastic.
Oh, loved it. I'm angry that people don't think these.
I loved when he was doing
these Universal Monster series have been good enough. There's all the, we didn't like the Mummy, we didn't like this, we didn't like Dracula Untold, or this and that, and I think they've all.
Well.
I think they've all been great, and I think the Universal Monsters deserves the series that they were trying to build, and Renfield was just gorgeous.
Even as I fucking hate Nicolas Cage, I loved Renfield, and I hate you, Raz. I hate you.
I can live with
Go
it.
away.
I almost did one worse, but I was not going to do that to you. I almost put favorite song, and I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want anybody to torment with you with it. But I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Is that the recent post?
Yes.
Yeah, that post got me restricted on Facebook because what I answered back was, it was 2 a.m. and I was in a mood, and I'm like, Todd White, that whiny bitch ass motherfucker. I want to punch him every time I want to see him.
I don't even know who that is, but
Look him up. He's.
I'm sorry that you had to get
Are you?
in trouble because I hate a song so much that I kick people out of my house for singing it.
But yeah, so he's a televangelist who's a big charlatan, and is just
Okay.
Very
I thought he
true.
was like somebody who sang that song because as it was pointed out to me, they were like, which version? And I'm like, I hate the song. I don't sit around
What
and
song
see.
are we talking about?
Oh, Cotton Eye Joe.
Oh,
I
yes,
did see that
saw
post.
that, Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah, I saw that post.
Long time ago.
Yeah,
Actually, it was just a couple of
stop,
days.
or I will
wasn't it?
kick you off
Hey,
my
Jeremy,
network.
where did
Jeremy,
you
you
come from?
just got on.
earlier?
Don't.
Where
don't
did
do
I
it.
come from? Oh,
Yeah.
well, let me tell you.
And then during the story, where did you go?
Now I am curious. I am
Seriously,
curious.
I had a 9-year-old with a nightmare.
Oh.
Oh, it's okay. They get over them real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, James. James,
Well,
you're curious.
I am curious. Is it just the? This is a folk standard song. Is it entirely, or just the Rednecks version that was in the '90s?
Well, as I hate the song, I didn't go look it up to be like, I wonder if there's a version of this song that I'm disgusted by
It
and
was the
hate
Rednecks
that I
version,
might
probably.
enjoy.
Because the only one I know is the
So-
Rednecks version, which is like Euro techno.
It was mentioned to me that like 30,000 people have covered this song, and I was I mean, it's like if you really, really, really hate Amazing Grace, I don't know why that's just the most covered song in history, pretty much. So actually, yeah, as far as I know.
I love Amazing Grace.
Yeah, but I mean, but if you were really
Go marching in.
offended by Jesus Christ, Jeremy.
Sorry, I grew
Wait,
up in the church.
wait,
It
hold
was
on,
tough.
hold on. There's supposed to be like a ... and otherwise is offended by Jesus Christ.
Fun
Actually,
fact,
you get the Dell is judging you stare.
Fun fact, during a period of my time, I actually did Elvis impersonations, and I did sing Amazing Grace on multiple occasions.
You have not experienced Amazing Grace until you've heard it in the original Klingon.
That's like
Yeah.
okay. Everybody loves Hallelujah. Leonard Cohen, great song, covered by many, many, many people. Some covered well, some covered not. But
This is one of the bad versions.
Actually,
no. Okay, so the only version that I've listened to that like I'm not. What's the band that they do all their stuff a cappella, and everybody's like, oh yeah, they're awesome because they sing a cappella and pentatonic. They stand on a beach and sing. Okay, not a
I was
fan.
going to say rockapella.
I can deal with some of their stuff. They do some good versions of stuff, but I'm not just like, oh my god, every version you did something is better than anybody else's. But John Bon Jovi tried to do Hallelujah, and it's really bad. And I like John Bon Jovi.
Yeah, I'm a Bon Jovi fan too, and it was surprising.
Yeah.
It's just those songs where you're just like, wow, you should never have tried that ever.
Okay, so the worship pastor at my church, he took his young son to see Bon Jovi because he was
I would
actually
go see Bon Jovi.
He was telling me that the band was on point, but John Bon Jovi, he's not hitting him like he used to, which makes me sad.
How long ago?
But then, last year sometime.
Okay, so I saw them. My ex-wife was a huge. I mean, like I've never met anyone that loved John Bon Jovi as much as her. Like even Vampires Los Muertos, she loved because he was in it. Like that was her obsession level, right? Even the weird National Lampoon's movie he did too was The Inventor. But I got a chance to go see him because of her, and I liked Bon Jovi, but I wasn't like I wasn't like her loving Bon Jovi. But I had to say, like when I saw him, they did like 4 or 5 encores, like everybody up there. Like I was blown the fuck away that I was at a Bon Jovi concert and I was so riveted. I didn't want to go to the bathroom. I just could not take my eyes off the stage. Like I did not expect to be that impressed at that point. So it's sad to hear that.
Sounds like me at a ZZ Top concert. I was kind of
That's
shocked.
I saw them at a Rib Fest once here in town, and that was amazing because it was like a very
I'm
small
not a
stage.
huge
Like
Top fan, but like seeing them in concert was something. Like when they busted out with the leg song, and like there's electricity coming down, and like the girls, and it's impressive what they do.
if you want the most chilling like live like music experience ever, the actual band live. Believe it or not,
Really?
Oh, I saw them live. I saw Live live,
also-
and I saw Death live.
live is also
The
the
Grateful
only
Dead?
No, Death.
Death,
Oh,
yeah.
Death.
Live is the only band I've ever actually heard live that actually sounded better than the recorded material. Like the only experience
I
I've
can
ever had in my life.
see that.
Ed's voice, man. There's just something I can't put my finger on it, but it's an indefinable quality of his.
So,
You know-
so Bon Jovi's only 61, and I wanted to look up because one of the better singers that I've seen, and this was within the past couple of years. I can't remember. Like, lost my freaking good YouTube account that had been going Facebook account that had been going on for 11 years. Anyone can sing Big Yellow Duck.
Oh, I looked
Okay.
it up. There's actually one song that has been covered so many times and is covered like continuously. They stay on a daily basis so often that they've not been able to like keep track of the amount of times. As of 2.5 decades ago, they just stopped keeping track. It's Happy Birthday.
Is it? Well, okay.
It is not. I'm not even telling you a joke right now. Like I am dead
Yeah.
serious. It is
No, I
listed
get
as
it.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say "Wish You Were Here" would be another one, but I saw Bob Seger, who is currently 78, like a couple of years ago, and that man fucking rocked the stage. He was going, and alto, the sax player, wow. I mean, like all he does is, but he does it really well, and you can tell like when he's standing in the corner and he's got the spotlight on him, they're like 15 girls in the audience who are under the age of like 20 that are all like, I'm going to sleep with you tonight if I possibly can. And he's like 90, but playing that sax for those little things. They're that good.
If you've not heard this cover, if you've not heard this cover before, go to YouTube immediately. It's Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, Audio Slave fame, etc., and his solo career. I got to be in a very small, intimate environment where my band actually ended up unknowingly opening for him. And he does a cover of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. That me being a non-emotional, not really able to process things like that kind of person, if it's just on and I walk into a room, immediate tears. Just it's super out there. You would never think like a Michael Jackson cover could be saying that fucking way, dude. It's powerful.
Okay, this is the part where I geek out about Weird Al Yankovic. So, been almost a lifelong fan of the artist ever since I was 12 and first heard Like a Surgeon on playing on the radio.
Like a surgeon.
Right?
Like a surgeon.
Now, I've seen him in concert twice. The second time was an outdoor venue, and it was like August in Nebraska, and he did Fat in that fat suit. He did everything. They were on point. My favorite part was when they all just did a stripped down acoustic set, a medley. They started off playing note for note the acoustic version of Layla that was done on MTV Unplugged. Only they used the lyrics to Eat It. To that, it was brilliant. That man is my favorite ones are always not the spot on parodies that he does, but like the style type.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing how he can do that and still keep going.
Oh yeah.
My favorite song of his is it's something like the chorus is something like, "Darling, I get the feeling that you don't love me anymore," and it's all about like poisoning his coffee and stuff like that. That's
great.
But so we're kind of running up. What do you guys, Tom, Rob, Jar Jar? What are your big like music funsies?
My first concert was a Weird Al Yankovic concert.
Epic, man. Hell yeah.
Straight out of Linwood tour.
Nice.
Seen
And-
Korn a million times.
Who?
Korn?
I actually got some personal stories to tell you about them later on, man. I'm a huge Korn fan. Huge.
Okay. My first concert.
I don't know where this came from, but hug to someone.
My first
Sorry.
concert. Hold on. My first concert was the Statler Brothers.
I actually love the Stellar Brothers. I've met them 8 times because they were one of my grandmother's favorite
Guess who
bands.
was
At her
my
time,
first?
she like followed them.
They do a great show. I have to admit, I was like 17 or 16 still.
Up until like 5 years before she passed, she still got a Christmas card from them every year.
Nice.
That's
Now
very
my
sweet.
musical tastes are like really slow, easy listening. Like I like music that has feeling.
Same.
Nice.
But yeah,
I'm
I'm talking shit. In my first concert experience, I was 12, the summer before I turned 13, and it was Guar in an old opera house.
Nice.
That was super weird.
Oh, I'm so jelly.
And then the very next summer, TLC at an amusement park. It was totally.
My Gore shirt is upstairs.
I went to Gore with James, and due to seizures, I have to watch the concerts with a shirt over my face for most of them.
She tied one of my shirts over.
People
And
must
yes.
just
That's
be
pretty
like really confused by they're just like,
Why am I suddenly covered in
ninja.
blood? Oh shit!
she's a
Well,
ninja.
I got though, like, because everybody, Guar is the only like, what category of metal do we put them in? Give me- James, you're the expert.
Well, I would say they're metal, but they
Rock opera.
they have a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like everybody blows them off thinking, oh, all gimmicky. No, these were former art students.
Yeah.
First of all,
Man,
so
And
yeah,
actually, the theme for the chorus of "Have You Seen Me" when they do the "Have You Seen Me,"
Yeah,
I'm not. Don't
I
even.
would say that
Beautiful.
That's from like Mahler's 7th or 9th Symphony, and I was listening to it in Mr. Bartle's class in humanities in high school. I was like, "Oh my god, that's Guar!" And he's like, "You need to bring me this album." I'm like, "No, you do not want to hear these songs. These lyrics."
I have a
being
weird
put
connection to
through.
Guar. The guy when I first came into acting in film, the guy that I first started with did a lot of special effects, and he was very close with their whole special effects team. And for a small period of time, actually filled in with their lead special effects guy for part of the Guar. Like their shit, their effects are so fucking cool, man. The way they do everything, it's a lot of couch cushion foam. Like you'd be surprised how much of like that kind of foam they go through like on a daily basis when they're building props.
Well, when they went to Lincoln, and I went with James. Since I was unable, like, Guar's the only metal band that you see most of the people dressed in white when they go because they want to get covered in blood
Blood,
and then have that as a keepsake
Blood,
for their
fake
show.
semen, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd gone out shopping and I got this like white peasant blouse, but based on the sheer amount of strobing, like I could watch the between the scenes, like the performance of what was going on, just not the songs themselves. But there were 200 people or so in that pit, and I'm a pit girl, but I'm also a bacon dance girl, so I couldn't try to get there. But we were sitting like the middle level, and we'd stopped kind of hanging out by the merch guy, and there were some people coming out of the bathroom. One guy was just drenched, and I was like, "Hey, man," and he was like our age, and I was like, "Dude, I'm epileptic. I cannot get down to the pit. I bought this. I wanted some blood. Can I just get some like Guar love blood from you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he gave me a hug, and he like
Guar love blood.
And then he had his friends, like he told them about the poor chick sitting down by the merch table who could not get her own Guar blood. And so all of the people that had the most blood on them came down to give me hugs and enhance the amount of blood that was on. And it's still in my bedroom. I have my shirt all saved with my Guar love blood on it.
When I saw them, I didn't know who the fuck they were, except for Beavis and Butthead talked about them, and then they were in the Beavis and Butthead Sugar game. So I had to see them. Like it was just a thing. And I didn't know they did movies. I didn't know any of this shit. So I was there and actually bought 12 years old, and they sold me because I looked like I was 18. I had a beard like already and everything. So like I bought a copy of their movie Phallus in Wonderland. And I went home later that night and watched it after the show. And my sister and my mom sat out in the parking lot the whole time just to make sure we could go home safely. So I get home and I plug it in. started watching it. My mom was like, "This is the band that you just saw." And she's like, "All right then." And then she just kind of
Going
Exit
to a
stage
Gore
left.
concert is on the top list of things I want to do before I die.
I'm
Reason
spoiled now.
being is because I want to get eaten by that worm.
Okay, that was just for the World Maggot Tour only. They don't do that all the time.
They
They
don't.
They have a different
Okay.
shtick every album that's like the whole ending, and that's how you get backstage. Actually, it's like the way you get to the backstage area. When I went through there, it was the organ grinder, so you had to go through the grinder to get backstage. When I was a kid, they do this
Wow.
big elaborate thing every time when they do the backstage based on the current album they're touring with.
Okay.
But I have heard they might be doing some of the original endings like that, like
Oh,
the
nice.
worm, the grinder, just kind of like a big like collection sort of thing. That's the word out on the street, I guess, as you call it right now. But it'd be really super cool to follow them around
Well,
for months and just kind of experience all the endings.
I do know that in the movie Capitol Records, the scene where one of the kids was
Yeah,
Empire Records. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Hey, Mark, join
Right.
the band.
right. And then the worm eats him and everything. But then 20 years later, Gore does a concert, and then the same actor like pops out of the worm and goes, "I was in there for 20 years." Shit. Yeah.
They
Nice.
forgot one of their giant phalluses in Lincoln in one of their previous shows, and I had friends who worked at the venue, and so
How do
they were
you
like,
forget a phallus?
"Well, this wasn't just a phallus. This was like a 10-foot tall phallus. Like, yeah, it was this huge thing." And so they're all like, "We're getting ready to forward this to Guar." But we all wanted pictures of it first. So there's all these like Facebook posts of like selfies with a giant penis and like the
I
whole
didn't think
crew
I'd
with
wake
a
up with a
giant
dick in my
penis.
hand today.
See,
You're so
I
glad
just
you're on this show, aren't you?
my
You're
bra-
like,
my brain just went to that scene in Spinal Tap where they're trying to do that Stonehenge. So I'm wondering if like, okay, we only put this, so it's supposed to be a 10-foot phallus, but this
someone
was
up
in
to 11.
right. This was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. But
You know, the sequel comes out to that movie next year. The Return
yes,
of Tap. Yeah.
Wow. Rob, what's your music go-to gig thing? We've all been kind of like isolating you.
It's mostly stuff I can sing along with. I'm hugely eclectic, but I sing all the time.
Are you a tenor?
I'm a terrible.
so 10 or 15
nothing.
miles.
It's like I tell the kids, the only instrument I play is the radio.
Yeah.
Yes,
I sing 10 or 15 miles away.
yes. I actually just spent a little while trying to find a Nicolas Cage cover of Cotton Eye Joe, and I can't find one.
Dude, I got an idea. New video project. We're gonna take the theme song. I can yank it without the lyrics, and then we're gonna take all these different clips from Nick Cage movies until we
I'm going to
find
judge you.
piece together the lyrics from movies. That'd be fun. It'd be a fun project. Should be easy to do. He talks enough sometimes.
Oh God, yes, he does. And I'm very sorry to all of the Nicolas Cage fans out there, and I'm probably sorry to Nicolas Cage himself. You just
sure he
fucking
takes it
creep
well.
me out. He's just kind
That's
of.
okay. I creep myself out too.
Yeah, he's like
Yeah.
one of those guys that kind of knows.
Are you going to finish that sandwich?
My
He's been in
my
on the
friend
joke
Cooper
sometimes.
was actually the cop in the Mom and Dad movie he did. So he actually got to meet him. And he said like the whole time they were filming, he was just very I wouldn't really talk to anybody. Just seemed off. And Cooper started realizing that all he was doing was playing his character, but when they weren't filming. And then after it was all over, he went and shook everybody's hands individually. Every cast member, craft services, every person that touched that set. He went up to each of them and said, "Hey, super sorry I came off probably awkward, weird. This is how I kind of stay in character. It's my shtick. I really appreciate the fact that you were here. Thank you so much." And individually made the time to shake everyone's hand. Like, and I already liked him before, but hearing that story coming from my buddy Cooper, like that was like, holy shit, that's cool, man.
See, and part of it has to do with, and this is incredibly shallow, but it's an attractiveness basis thing. And okay, Brad Dourif doesn't realize he's my boyfriend, but one of these days I'm going to get a nice house with a nice basement, and he's going to find out and stay there very comfortably for the rest of his life.
And I'm going to have to kidnap him in the panel van. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I have a huge crush on Bill Moseley. I've had that since I was a teenager, and he was Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. All about James Woods, except his politics. And a bunch of other people, and my ex was like, "You are into creepy old men. That's what you are. You just really fucking like creepy old men." And I'm at this point, I'm like, I'm old too, so it doesn't make a difference, you know. But apparently, like, there's just a certain type of face and type of acting, which includes Nicolas Cage, Jim Carrey.
We've had like hour-long
all
conversations
these things.
about how wrong she is about Cage and Kari. I just want to say that.
Oh yeah, he tells me all the fucking time. But no, actually, it was supposed to be this. But it's just my personal taste makes them all out to be. And the one I use as the big example is David Hasselhoff. They all somehow kind of remind me of David Hasselhoff,
sucks,
and he's
like
just wrong.
No,
and like he posed in the 80s with those Shar-Pei puppies, covered like he's naked, hairy, and covered with wrinkle puppies, and people were like, "Oh, that's great." I'm like, those dogs were in therapy for the rest of their fucking lives.
The SPCA didn't say a word,
and that's just terrible. So it might have something to do with they're also over the top in things. I like John Malkovich.
In my defense, I've only recommended a lot of Jim Carrey's non-comedy to her because that's where he really.
Okay, I've sat through a couple and I have enjoyed them. And one of them actually was a comedy, The Liar Liar.
That's one of his comedies that I do like. Yeah.
It wasn't him being insane and overacting.
I'm
I mean, he was
kicking
overacting.
my ass. Do you mind?
But yeah, but that's just my taste, and I'm sorry. And every group needs that one person, so I'm that one person.
Naysayer.
Well, all I can say is there are 5 Nicolas Cage movies that made me a fan. One was was Pig. His performance in Pig. 2 is Willy's Wonderland.
Oh man, yes.
Where he didn't even have a line of dialogue.
Well, they revealed later that his character is supposed to be autistic.
We were just talking about Renfield.
It explains whole thing.
Renfield is another good one. I have to admit, it was Gone in 60 Seconds that made me a fan. And then there's Mandy.
Oh, that was a good one too.
Hmm.
I come from a whole different side. Like when I was a kid, I saw Raising Arizona, and I thought I saw them as a family. The convicts, everybody sitting at the table, and I didn't necessarily have that kind of life. And I thought,
dude, that's
a family. That's what a family is. Like that is it right there, and that's what Nick Cage just kind of crept in my brain. But Drive Angry is probably the modern movie of his, the more modernish movie that he's done that I think I love the most.
Yeah, and I will say that he's been in one of the best adaptations of an H.P. Lovecraft story.
Oh my god,
that I've ever seen.
Face was brilliant.
Yeah,
fucking brilliant.
I still got to see Renfield, but it's on Peacock right now.
Yeah, Renfield's for the watch, but yeah, Color Out of Space. If you can grab it, man, it is just whoever did that screenplay. Period, and I just can't remember the name offhand. I'm sure I can look up in a minute. But just it was so beautifully translated, and every single person in the movie their characters just oozed what they were supposed to be. It was I've never seen, like he said, an H.P. Lovecraft movie that was that perfect.
I liked them in Face Off and Broken Arrow though.
Yeah, but I'm still not sure why we need to Face Off 2.
I hate John Travolta as well.
I just figured out the whole plot. It's just going to be the two of them running around using the refacing app. Holy shit.
I'm going to take his face off. Oh, look. Have you seen this?
I hate John Travolta. He's just terrible as well. And I even it gets.
Man, you don't fuck with Grease Lightning.
I can't. You can't help. It's like you can't help who you fall in love with. You can't help who disgusts you to the bottom of your soul.
Even
They just do so.
I grew up for most of my life absolutely in love with Uma Thurman personally. Like a large portion of my
Oh,
life was dedicated
love her. She's a sweetie. But yeah, John Travolta, and who's the guy? There's a guy who reminds me of him. I need to check it out. I know he's the co-star in May.
Okay.
Oh, I love
John,
May, dude.
John
talking about-
Travolta fucked me up when I was 9.
Jeremy Sisto.
Because
Did he
that's
show up and punch you in the face at school?
No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw Kari,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and
Okay.
when I was 9, he was a sweat hog. He was Vinnie Barbarino. He wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be sledgehammering pigs in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't ready for that.
I had a great time
The world
with
was not
that
ready for that.
storyline when I was doing stand-up comedy because I was born right around when that movie was released. And I'm Kari, and I was born on Halloween. So I had I'm sorry, I can't go out tomorrow. I have to wash my hair. Just like little shit like that. Refacing, isn't that just Snapchat?
I've never
used Snapchat. I just accidentally subscribed to Reface, and I keep not canceling it.
I tried
Jeremy
Snapchat.
Sisto freaks me out
Really?
because he looks like John Travolta.
It is a little bit like a very permanently young and skinnier version.
Who's this?
Yeah.
I gotta look at a picture of him. I'm just picturing
Jeremy-
somebody else in my head.
What's
Jeremy
the actor's name?
Sisto. Let me.
Jeremy
Jerem-
Sisko.
Oh, Jeremy
Sisto.
Sisko. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
He's
trying
also-
to.
He's
I can't.
super awesome. As an actor, though.
I'm trying to find a picture of him, and I could pull up and.
I do have the same guy in my head. Okay.
Yeah, but when he was in May, he looked a lot like just a younger John Travolta, and I was just like, ugh.
I remember him like really taking off in 6 Feet Under.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Clueless and then 6 Feet Under. Yeah.
Oh wait,
Some political movie I watched back in the day, I think, that he was in, that he played like a douchey kind of political head.
Brawl. I love the state of the world that we're in right now, where we can all be hanging out from all different places. We have the East Coast, the Midwest, and everybody hanging out together, and we're like talking about something, and then immediately like, I don't know what you're talking about. Shh. Now I do. It took me 5 seconds to
You know what's
understand your
amazing?
point.
My kids don't know how to use Google at all. They come up to me and they're like, "Hey, what's this thing? Blah blah blah." I'm like, "Dude, I have no idea. Don't you have a computer in your pocket?"
Yeah. Oh my God, that's my favorite phrase. Every time my wife asks me something, I'm the kids. I'm like, I do this whole big production. I'm like, man, I don't know the answer, but I know how we can find out, and it's magical. And they're like, what is it? And everybody, and the adults fall for this every time. And I'm like, dude, I just read last week on the internet, they created this small device that you can actually buy and carry around with you, and you can ask it anything, and it knows the answer. When can we? What is it? It's called a telephone. It has the
Chat
internet.
GPT.
Fucking look it up.
Have you ever used the May I Google That For You app before?
No, because that makes me feel dirty.
I love that. People ask, you just go to, or no, let me Google that. It's let me
That's
Google
worse.
that for you.
That's what
And you go and you type it in, and then you give them a link when somebody's like, what's going on? And then it pulls up, like, it shows a scene of the Google, you typing in the question, and then it pulling up the answer and being like, see, wasn't that fucking easy?
Yeah.
Like, my problem is my mother learned everything on her phone instead of on her laptop and her computer. So we were booking, we were booking my tickets to go to Terrificon at the end of July.
That sounds terrific.
Yay!
Yeah, and we going to Terrificon. We were booking my plane tickets and my hotel rooms, and she's on her laptop, and she's like, "Oh, I don't use a mouse. I use the little pad thing on it." And she's not stupid. She's been doing this for years. She does multi-screen. She does all that shit. But she uses her phone for 90% of her stuff. So she's just like, my screen got bigger. How do I make it go down? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I use a mouse like real people do.
Can she teach
Well,
me how to use
I don't know how to
phone?
use Facebook on this. Well, I could show you, but, I use it on my laptop like fucking computer people. I use a computer for my computer. I use a phone to call, text, and like take pictures now. There is literally somebody on Tumblr at one
I
point.
feel like you're
who-
channeling Dennis Leary right now, and I love it.
They had this whole thing, like Tumblr. There's an ongoing joke of you need to go outside there actually is a world that pops up quite a bit in Tumblr posts when people spend way too much time. I left Tumblr like a decade ago, but while I was still on there, somebody had posted like, wouldn't it be awesome if there was a way to like talk to somebody and just talk to them like we do texting and stuff or Snapchat, but all we have to do is talk? And somebody was like, that is what your phone is literally fucking supposed to be for. That is what it is based off. You just use the phone shaped option. Go the fuck outside. Because people don't realize. Yeah. I mean, we're all over the age of, God, I can't place everybody here. I don't want to date anybody, but
Well, us
we're
Gen
all over the age of
Xers,
35 at least. We're between like 35 and 50-ish in this range.
right?
Like that.
We remember what dialing,
You know what?
like
I don't give
literally
a shit. I am
using a thing on a
40.
phone.
I'm gonna be 41 in a couple of months, and I've earned and survived every year that. I'm proud of that shit, man.
45 this year. Not bad.
Yeah, I'll be
40
45 this year too.
This
In
year
a
I'll be
couple months
50.
actually.
I'll be 50. So you youngins don't know how you have it.
We walked to school.
My
I'm
wife calls
54.
me
I know
a
exactly how
trash
you
dog.
have it.
3 feet of snow uphill both fucking ways.
Why didn't you go home the
But-
same way you walked?
No,
Because it wasn't an option. Fuck off.
see us Gen Xers, we were born at the right time where it was before the internet was ubiquitous as it is now.
Mhm.
We could figure out. See, around my nephews, whenever the Wi-Fi goes out, I'm the only one not freaking out. I'm like, that's right. You pick up a book, and just we did this thing called reading and going outside, and sometimes we didn't come back until like the outside lights started coming on. It was.
You couldn't call your friends really because it was awkward to speak.
We
to
weren't
parents,
allowed
so-
inside. I
Yeah,
don't know.
you would know they were home if their bikes.
Unless you're bleeding, stay the fuck out there.
Yeah.
You only
Yeah,
knew
no, I was
Street lights
actually
were a
afraid to-
curfew.
There's
I
a
was afraid
hose.
to tell that we
Wash
were
the blood
bleeding.
off.
We were
Your
like,
ass
if
get
somebody
admitted
got
to
hurt,
get
we're
in
like,
for it.
somebody else is the doctor around here.
I would spend hours in this box of sand outside at a playground.
So to everybody else who writes here, which is like at least half of us, how hard is it when you're writing now? Because we had all these awesome novels that we grew up with reading, and now there's like the internet and cell phones, and it's like, oh, you just hit one button and you contacted everyone, and you hit 3 buttons and you researched all your problems. To actually write in the present time, like not to write your stories back before those things.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like I go into Gothic levels and drop back to a time before it was like, oh, I can just do all this and it's done.
Right.
But how many of you actually write in the current time, and how do you use that effectively? Or have you read people who do that?
You mean the problem of trying to create any kind of isolation in a world that everybody's just connected?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Depends on the story.
I think my process when I was like super young, like writing, because I had a typewriter at one point in time, but then the family got the word processor, right? So I would just take my word processor to the library because I actually did all the same 6-7 hours of research for like 2 lines of text that I do now. It was just for books and having to find them all one by one. So my research is just faster.
Well, but as we were saying, making the setting of the story in a place where you aren't where you don't have a phone on you all the time, and you don't have like Linda. Just starting to try and write present time. It is actually I can't do it because I'm like I remember what things scare me and do things, and it's just like, oh, but that's all you can do is say like, and then they went to a place with no service.
So
Okay, and James?
I just started writing my. Seems like everybody's doing like a supernatural noir novel or story ever since I said out loud that I really like Harry Dresden, and
I'm a big Dresden.
all of a sudden, Facebook and Google are popping up. Hey, this is something from so and so. It's I'm like, okay, sorry I asked, but I have a character that has been he's set in Omaha, but he's been alive for about 1,500 years because his physiology, it's kind of like a mutated state where he's technically immortal, but he's not because there is a way to kill him, but just has a really, really accelerated healing factor and metabolism. He just lives a long time. So in the present sense, he's in Omaha as kind of a part a detective, but also an enforcer of. Well, let's just say that Omaha is now a safe haven for vampires, which just happened a couple of years ago. This is kind of like doing a. Dresden is awesome, very awesome. I can't wait for the next novel to come out.
Same.
But this is kind of like taking a cue from the Anita Baker novels.
Okay. Yeah.
The vampire hunters, but he doesn't like vampires because all the ones he's met were just flaming narcissists who were just using everybody for food.
They suck, man.
Right. Vampires do suck. However, Omaha being the safe haven, he was nominated as the official enforcer of this. So he's kind of like checking up on a illegal slaying of one of the local vampires there, because because outside of like tourists who want to come and get their pictures taken with vampires or whatever, they also have. This is also like the world where the hunters from Supernatural are kind of a thing too, and the character itself, I'm using as a way to explore my own depression and disconnect from humanity itself, because that's very, very strong. It's the phenomenon of being like in a crowded room and yet being alone.
Right.
So yeah, so somebody as long lived as that, you kind of like get into a psyche about seeing loved ones come and go, die.
Yeah.
Over time, let's kind of get into the psychological points.
Definitely.
And with Mariah, you can only really create issues and conflicts for worlds where that technology is obsolete or non-factor.
Well, with that, I think the perfect example is the story "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream."
That was good.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
I think you take it a step farther and just stop thinking about phones and computers. VR. If I really want to write a place in the world that I've never been, I can literally go and find a friend or somebody that's got a VR headset, and you can use like the Google Maps, like in the world views, like everything, also on the VR. But instead of like looking at all weird and shitty on your computer and it's like photographs, you're actually there. You're actually standing at the street of a house you lived in like 10 years ago, or you're standing on a beach in Hawaii and you can see everything perfect with perfect detail, and it's like, why leave? Why actually go there if you don't have to deal with human beings and you can stay at home and write all day or whenever you can write, but you can see these things and describe them perfectly now. So does that make it easier to write?
Just don't invest $3,500 into the new Apple. Is it augmented or VR?
Yeah,
Tom,
yeah,
the AR technology.
I'll be right back.
I was just good. Thomas,
I'm a big fan of the VR stuff. Like I've been waiting for that stuff since Lawnmower Man, and
oh fuck yes, Joe.
My God, like my kids got the what is it called?
Oculus.
Yeah, the Oculus.
They're cool.
And like there was some Jurassic Park thing, and just the opening Universal, you come in and you're over the planet, and it's disorienting. Like you're just like, holy shit, and you like just put the glasses on, like your brain really just takes you there. It's kind of fun. I like playing this paintball game on it. It's kind of cool.
Do you use extra peripheral, like, do you have handheld things as well?
Yeah. There's these little I forget what they're called, but yeah,
gloves or something.
No, they're
Oh.
not gloves. They're little joysticks.
They almost
Yeah.
look like the Wiimotes, like not the
Yeah.
the stick ones with the little hands that just have the little button triggers on the top, and there's usually
Yeah.
like a hand guard so you don't throw your controller.
Yeah,
They
I
do
would
have gloves.
definitely make sure you have room because I've punched walls so many times because of those things, and it's just like, oh, son of a bitch.
If you are a fan of Ready Player One, they actually have
Oh, yeah.
haptic gloves.
Didn't
There
know they
are
had those.
major learning hospitals, like teaching hospitals, where they can't get as much hands-on time to do certain surgeries, and they developed haptic gloves with like real sensory and everything, so you could fine-tune like learning surgery and things like that. That was like 10 years ago they were doing that already.
Oh, yeah.
So like it's insane how far you can take that.
This is something I need to bring up because, okay, an author on the 20 Questions podcast, I can whine and talk well, would use the Google Street View to write the stories. He used what he saw to make the scenes work. My dad actually
Oh yeah.
was mowing his yard in like shorts and his shirt off or whatever in one of the Google Street View pictures going past his house. And so we've like kept a copy of that
That
will
should have been a
last
Christmas card
forever.
that year.
It's one of those, yay, Dad. Dad, I love you if you happen to be watching this, but you're a bit furry. And you know this. So, but he does keep in pretty decent shape. So he's not like,
Yeah.
like we have, my mom has a neighbor who is like in his 90s. He's not going to watch this. Who likes to do his, he's still, I'm so happy for the guy because he's all about going out, doing his gardening, keeps up, stays, he's not in shape. He's kind of got a gut, but he wears like shorts, no shirt, and suspenders. And then he's got this like giant belly, like bigger than mine, and fur everywhere. And so it's just like, well, Doc's out there furring it up in the garden. So, but good going, Doc, because you're out there doing shit and working up a sweat and like moving instead of like people who are just like, just gonna sit here.
I feel like next Sunday, whichever, I forget which show we've got coming up on next Sunday, but
it's Carissa.
Oh yeah, that's right. But on that show, what's going to happen is she's going to tell us the story about how literally like in a couple days from now, she was going to get a knock on the front door. Her mom, like at like 5 a.m, it's going to be that guy just standing there going, I saw your daughter's podcast the other day, and I did not appreciate it.
Nah. Doc loves me. They thought I was my mother's sister for the longest time, which that was fine. Mom has aged very well, so I still get carded going into the casinos and shit. So I'm happy.
I've been carded since I was 9, and it's kind of depressing.
I'm 47 and I still get carded. So, and there's the one awkward guy always like. The one in my area is at one of the Walgreens, and yes, everybody else calls it Walgreens. Fuck you. But I go to the Walgreens.
How do you say the color green?
Green.
But
it's Walgreens.
Walgreens.
No, it's Walgreens.
Okay.
Anyway, so I go
We're
to the
from
Walgreens.
a town called Hooper.
Yes. How do you say hoop? Hoop, but we say hooker with a P for hooper.
Do you
so we go
read
to
boots?
Walgreens. And there was one checker that would constantly be like, he'd have to check me every time. And it was like he forgot every time. And he'd be like, you're that old? And there'd be a line because, we had the whole COVID thing going on. And he started working there when COVID, and there's like, everybody's trying to buy their toilet paper and shit. And so we're all 6 feet apart and we're filling the entire store. And he's like, you don't look that old at all. I mean, like, wow, you're really old for what you look like. And he'd do it for like 2 minutes.
And then she'd be like, can it, Jimmy? Put the condoms and Vaseline in the bag.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I just want
You can keep the duct tape.
Come on. I love you, Jeremy.
See, I have the opposite problem because I've looked older since, they stopped carding me when I was 16 for some odd reason. But, when I was 35, they kept asking if I wanted the senior discounts. Then I'd have to shave the beard. Still, on principle, though.
I've been getting shit from the AARP in the mail for 10 years. The year I turned 30, I got the first one, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like,
I'm on Medicaid, so I've been getting AARP since then. But I did once actually get carded when I was in my 30s, going out with my mother and the kiddo and a couple of her friends to see if I qualified as an adult or not.
Do not see
And-
this R-rated movie by yourself.
Well, no, like I was the one who would take all of the kiddos to the R-rated movies, but I once went in with my mother and the kids, and they were like, "Oh, so are you, you know, a teenager?" And I'm like, "I'm 35. I will pay the extra $10, but I thank you so much for assuming that I was a fucking teenager."
Take my money.
Yeah, have it. So at this point, I'm just rambling. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do want to thank you guys for all joining us today. Like I said, this is it's a special day, extra special day for us because it's the first official like show we did here on our own network. Yay! And like I don't know, we got to see a lot of great elements of what storytelling is and can be. You know, we had the funny, the not so funny, the terrifying, the emotional. We kind of ran this like really cool gamut today and like had a lot of great conversations to surround it. So. I mean, to me, again, I think this is going to go down as the best show I've ever done, and I've done a lot of shows, man. So thank you guys for being a part of that.
And
Cool.
we will be this will be up immediately on YouTube, but we will also be clipping out everybody's individual stories
Mhm.
so they can be told. So if you have something that you want us to name the story, just let us know here in a little bit.
Yeah.
You're
thank
fun,
you.
Shannon. Thank you.
Shannon, we're going to have to talk to at some point because she grew up in one of the towns that I've told you about that is scary in Nebraska.
Nice.
And
That'd
we're
be
going
awesome.
to see if she's willing to share with us. I mean,
Is it
if
full
she's
of
willing.
corn?
What town is that?
North Platte.
North Platte. Okay.
Yeah, where they had the ice house and a bunch of other
Oh yeah.
really creepy things going on.
I also want to say thank you, Jenny. Thank you, East Coast Connor. Yeah, East Coast Hunters. Thank you, Mariah. Like you guys, seriously, like thank you for joining us tonight.
Patty.
And Patty, yes, Patty was up here earlier too. You guys mean a lot to us. We really appreciate you guys supporting us. Again, make sure you're supporting all your like indie podcasts, man. Like this means a lot to all of us, no matter what network we are on alike. Like it's really important, and you guys supporting this for all of us makes a difference. So thank you.
Yeah. Browse and I, you can catch our information down below or up above, wherever you're at. Jeremy, I will be adding yours in because he joined us a little bit late, but I'm going to go through.
Hold on, is this going to be the first show that actually recognizes I'm on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you'll have more where you're like an actual host. This is Jeremy showed up to hang out and be announced that he was part of the network, if that works. It's your first appearance, but not your first show.
I'm on about 4 shows, and like, I don't think one of them has me in their intros or anything.
We're working on that. We'll talk to you about that after we get done. I'm going to let everybody.
We're going to change his name to Jeremy Cena.
We love you, Jeremy. One of us.
I don't mind
it.
Like, after coming back from non-podcasting, podcasting just on its own, like it's its own reward. I was part of a team that was all about becoming famous and stuff like that. Which, if you're on podcasting, you should never do it for that.
No.
But
it's like writing for the money.
Yeah.
Right?
It just doesn't make sense. But once they thought they were seeing the top of the mountain, we all left each other, and now they're still in the same place, and I'm back. Yeah. So it's great.
I love that, dude. Like I did radio and then podcasting for a long time. Actually, Mariah over here in the chat was the first big show that I ever really did.
Hey, Steve.
Hey. We had a chance to do this really awesome thing together for like many years. And then when it kind of, we just, life changed, life changed, people, change. We kind of stopped doing it. And I took like a 3-year break, like almost a full 4 years with like little false starts here and there. And then getting back into it more full time. And it's just, you're right. It's a reward, dude, for sure.
Yeah. Like, dude, now, I had been even during that time, but I get invited to like tons of Comic-Cons and to run panels and stuff. people are like, "Oh, how much do they pay you?" I'm like, dude, I get to hang out with like people like I don't know, Lance Henriksen or like Machete. Like, I'm just like,
Right?
that in
Yeah.
itself is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
It
just want to
is
tell
amazing.
stories and tell things about people telling stories, and interviews and things like that work.
Yeah.
And these are super fun, sitting around and actually sharing the stories with people.
Yeah.
But sharing the stories, the storytellers, that's what we want to do. And everybody has their own thing that their podcaster and the network wants to do, and we don't want to cross any paths or cut off any bridges. You guys know you want to burn any bridges or anything like that, or step on anybody's toes, but we want to do the things that we're about, and we're about sharing stories, and
All of you.
And it works out great to have Ruby go on. So Raz and I, we've said our bit tonight. I'm going to start with James and go around clockwise, tell you a little bit. And James and Jeremy, you are now part of here, but you don't know all the shit about here, so we'll tell you about it after the show.
Okay. Whoa, I'm big.
You are big.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, I'm online as Uncle Necro, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter. The other podcast, the Movies and Beer podcast, is movies-and-beer.blogspot.com. And I usually sweep my own brain droppings into neat little manageable piles at unclenecro.wordpress.com.
Right? Down to Tom Dog.
All right. Be sure to follow me on. You can find me on my Bro Pro group page over on Facebook. Those who follow me are welcome to post whatever they want, and even though I'm always posting something, but don't be shy. Feel free to, post some fun stuff and everything like that, and over on my YouTube channel, I do 2 shows, Wrestling Prime and Channel X. All this week, I'm going to be doing a Channel X video game special, which was originally E3 week, but that ain't happening. So I'm doing my own thing. So starting tomorrow night, I'm going to be doing the Xbox showcase, covering down with everything like that. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at TomDog247. And then while you're on, check all the stuff that I have on YouTube at TomArcade69. And while you're doing that, you can face hug that subscribe button.
Nice.
All right, over to Rob.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, but I won't find you because I'm never on there. If you actually want me to respond, you can find me on Facebook. Or my website, robsmales.com is easy if you can spell it. And I'm pretty active with New England Horror Writers. So if you look them up on Facebook as well, you'll probably find me farting around there.
All right, over to Jeremy. Jar Jar.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hey, you can check me out on the Dorkening Podcast Network, as well as now the Owl Light Network. Is that right?
Yes.
Look at me. I already got it down. All right. Over on the Dorkening, I hang out on shows like Splash Pages, which it airs every Tuesday night at 8. I'll be on, well, actually, we're not sure if I'll be on Still Toking this week because our guest has canceled, but that's on Wednesdays at 7, and this is all Eastern Standard Time. And let's see, there's Midweek Geeks on Wednesdays at 9, and let's see, I have an IMDb. Look up Jeremy Cordy. It's kind of fun. And that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with us
I do
tonight.
have one more thing. So over the years, I've had a lot of different sign-off phrases. Like in the beginning, it was France, if you're listening, fuck you. It's been angry things about Guatemalan children. Recently, it's been suck it. So I've even done the Fonzie, hey. So here's what I want to challenge everybody to do. We've got a month, right? In the next month, I want to have a new permanent catchphrase, and I kind of want to like source this out a little bit to everybody like listening. So we're gonna put a big like contest. I'm not gonna say what the prize is yet. We're getting there. But we're gonna put a big contest up, get everybody involved to come up with what my catchphrase will be for the following month. So for now, every show I'm gonna sign off with one of my favorite catchphrases from someone else. So tonight is good night and big balls.
Mega dildos.
Good night, everybody.
Put it in your mouth.
Cheers. So